Hawaii, once a symbol of American tourism, is now grappling with the most devastating tourism crisis in decades. What was once a dream vacation destination for millions of Americans is now eerily quiet. Beaches that once buzzed with life now lay empty, hotels are left vacant, and souvenir shops are permanently closed. The iconic archipelago, known for its vibrant culture and lush landscapes, has become a ghost of its former self. But the story of Hawaii's tourism collapse goes far beyond the shores of these islands. It's a warning sign for the broader American tourism industry, reflecting the deep struggles many iconic destinations are facing. Local businesses are shuttering, families reliant on tourism are in distress, and travelers are becoming increasingly cautious about spending. Could this be the beginning of a larger crisis for American tourism as a whole? As we dive into this unfolding story, we need your thoughts. Comment 1 if you agree that American tourism is facing a major crisis, and 0 if you disagree. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. And now, let's explore this crisis together. Hawaii's tourism crisis is unfolding with alarming figures. Recently, in June 2024, the number of tourists visiting Hawaii dropped by 2% compared to the same period last year. This is a clear sign of a decline in the tourism sector, which plays a vital role in the economy of this island chain. However, the most significant decrease occurred in Maui, where tourism dropped by more than 20% following the devastating Lahaina wildfire disaster, one of the worst natural events in the region's history. Maui, known as one of Hawaii's most popular tourist destinations, has witnessed severe devastation from the wildfire disaster. Famous areas like Lahaina, which once symbolized the culture and tourism of the region, now lie in ruins. The wildfire not only ravaged the natural landscape, but also disrupted the lives of thousands of local residents, pushing them into hardship. Local businesses, especially accommodations and restaurants, have been severely impacted, leading to a drop in income for those dependent on the service industry. Tourism in Hawaii, particularly on islands like Maui, plays a key role in generating employment and providing income for a large segment of the population. Workers in the hotel, restaurant, transportation, and customer service sectors are facing severe reductions in work and income. The decrease in visitors affects not only large companies, but also weakens small businesses, from family-run cafes to souvenir shops. This leaves many families not only without jobs, but also struggling with prolonged economic hardship. The Lahaina wildfire is a direct factor contributing to the decline in tourism in Maui. However, this is not just an isolated incident, but a clear example of the connection between natural disasters and the tourism economy. When disasters occur, tourist destinations not only suffer infrastructure damage, but also lose their appeal to visitors. Tourists are hesitant to visit areas that are facing natural disasters or have not fully recovered. As a result, tourism in affected regions not only takes longer to recover, but may also experience prolonged stagnation. While a slight decrease in tourism numbers may seem insignificant in the short term, in the long term, it will have far-reaching consequences. For Hawaii, this decline could lead to a restructuring of the local economy. Areas heavily reliant on tourism will need to find ways to adapt and develop other industries to avoid complete dependence on tourism. Traditional jobs like crafts, organic farming, and creative industries may become alternative options. However, this transition will not be easy and will require a long process. Hawaii must develop emergency response plans and strengthen preparations to cope with natural disasters. Disaster recovery projects must also be implemented efficiently and systematically to minimize impacts on local communities. Although tourism is Hawaii's main source of income, over-reliance on a single industry is risky. The government and community must promote diversification of the local economy, developing other sustainable and creative industries to avoid being too dependent on tourism. In this difficult situation, local residents must unite and support each other. Programs that assist those who have lost their jobs, help restore local businesses, and create new employment opportunities are crucial. At the same time, tourists must recognize their role in maintaining the community's growth by supporting local services and products. Another significant factor in the decline of tourism in Hawaii is the rise of movements calling on tourists to stay home from the native Hawaiian community. In recent years, an increasing number of native Hawaiians have spoken out about the negative impacts of tourism on their environment, culture, and society. Several organizations and community groups have started urging tourists to reconsider visiting Hawaii, especially when the benefits of the tourism industry don't always reach the local community. Many native Hawaiians argue that the tourism industry has contributed to overexploitation of natural resources, erosion of their culture, and skyrocketing living costs that burden the residents. These stories have spread widely through social media and mainstream media, leading many tourists to feel pressured to reconsider their trips. Some tourists, particularly those sensitive to social and environmental issues, may feel uncomfortable visiting an area where the local community is asking them to stay away. This movement is not just limited to individuals, but is also supported by organizations and the native Hawaiian community, making the message more powerful and hard to ignore. This is one of the factors causing a shift in tourist attitudes toward visiting Hawaii, creating a growing divide between the tourism industry and the local community. Areas affected by natural disasters need strong recovery plans, not only from the government, but also from investors and tourism businesses. Rapid recovery will help tourists return and maintain trust in the region's ability to recover. The government and tourism organizations need to find ways to support airlines in lowering ticket prices, especially for families and tourists on a limited budget. This could include subsidy policies or creating promotional programs to ease the financial burden on tourists. The Hawaii community and the tourism industry must find cooperative solutions to ensure that tourism develops sustainably without harming the environment and the culture of the local people. This could involve creating responsible tourism models that respect cultural values and protect natural resources. As tourism faces numerous challenges, understanding the root causes and finding appropriate solutions is essential to protect and sustainably develop Hawaii's tourism industry in the future. The people of Hawaii are facing an unprecedented crisis as economic and social factors combine to create a cost of living disaster. In this section, we will analyze the challenges the local community is overcoming, from the skyrocketing prices of essential goods to the impact of short-term rental models. One of the most serious issues Hawaii residents are facing is the sharp rise in the prices of essential goods. The high cost of gasoline has made transportation, especially for those living in more remote areas, a heavy burden. Locals are forced to spend significant amounts just to travel within the island, directly affecting their household budgets, which leads them to cut other expenses to maintain their daily lives. Along with this, the price of milk, one of the most essential consumer items, has also surged. This not only impacts families with young children, but also poses difficulties for the elderly or those on fixed incomes. The rising cost of milk means an increase in the cost of living, yet many locals' incomes have remained stagnant, creating a harsh and challenging life for them. However, the most severe impact has been the skyrocketing housing prices. Real estate prices in Hawaii, especially in central areas, have become an unbearable burden for local families. Many locals can no longer afford to buy a home or even rent one long-term. Meanwhile, competition from investors and tourists wanting to buy or rent homes in Hawaii has caused housing prices to soar, leading to a housing crisis. A major contributing factor to this housing price spike is the model of short-term rentals, especially through platforms like Airbnb. As more homes are converted into short-term rental properties for tourists, locals are increasingly unable to find long-term rental options at reasonable prices. Property owners, instead of renting to locals, prefer renting to tourists through Airbnb for higher short-term profits. This drives up rental prices, pushing residents out, particularly low and middle-income families. This model not only causes a housing shortage, but also increases the divide between local residents and outsiders, especially tourists and wealthy investors. Local residents, instead of having access to affordable housing, find themselves pushed out of areas where they've lived for generations. Moreover, the rise in short-term rental properties has also led to a shift in community dynamics. Neighborhoods once peaceful and closely connected to Hawaiian culture are now overcrowded, unstable, and lacking the long-term family bonds that once defined them. This not only affects the quality of life for residents, but also erodes the sense of community and neighborly compassion that Hawaii once had. As prices soar, local businesses are also facing significant hardships. Small shops, local restaurants, and family-run businesses are struggling with high costs for supplies, rent, and labor. Especially businesses that serve essential community needs, like grocery stores, pharmacies, and essential services, are unable to maintain reasonable prices as they face rising production costs. While larger businesses and tourist resorts may be able to raise prices to offset these higher costs, smaller businesses lack the resources to do so. This leads to a decline in the quantity and quality of local services, negatively affecting the everyday lives of residents. Local governments need to implement stricter policies on short-term rental models like Airbnb to protect local residents from being displaced from their homes. Measures to limit the number of short-term rentals could help reduce the housing shortage and make it easier for locals to access affordable housing. The government must take steps to reduce the cost of living for Hawaii residents, from controlling gas and milk prices to increasing support for low-income families. Financial assistance programs for those in difficulty need to be implemented more effectively to help them get through this tough period. Tourism is an important industry in Hawaii, but it needs to develop in a more sustainable direction. This could include encouraging tourists to engage in activities that do not harm the environment or local communities, while supporting local businesses in ways that do not place an additional burden on Hawaii residents. Hawaii needs to find comprehensive solutions to address these urgent issues, protect the livelihoods of local residents, and continue the development of the tourism industry in a way that benefits both the community and the economy. The tourism crisis in Hawaii is not just an economic issue, but also a crisis with social and cultural implications. Amid the sharp decline in tourism, local residents have begun to express increasingly strong reactions to the presence of tourists. These changes in attitudes and emotions reflect exhaustion, frustration, and a sense of invasion caused by the tourism industry's impact on their daily lives. In the past, the people of Hawaii were always proud of their tradition of welcoming visitors with open hearts. Aloha was not just a simple greeting, but a symbol of hospitality, kindness, and a warm welcome to all tourists. However, as tourism grew stronger, the benefits of tourism have not been equitably distributed. Instead, local residents began to feel overwhelmed by the influx of tourists, especially in the context of rising living costs and changing living environments. Today, aloha is no longer a welcoming greeting, but has become a ticket to send tourists away from their homeland. This is a reminder that the presence of tourists is no longer welcomed by locals as it once was. They feel that the areas, homes, and communities they have lived in for generations are being taken over. Resorts, upscale restaurants, and tourist-only zones are gradually replacing their living spaces, making them feel like invaders have arrived uninvited. With these changes, locals no longer see tourists as companions, but as intruders who alter the island's landscape and disrupt their lives. The rise in luxury resorts, short-term rental services like Airbnb, and changes in infrastructure have led many Hawaii residents to feel they are being pushed out of their own homeland. The growing anger and frustration within the Hawaii community are evident as locals witness the drastic changes in their lives. As costs rise and tourism continues to dominate public spaces, many locals feel abandoned. They believe that they do not receive equitable benefits from the booming tourism industry, but instead, they bear the negative consequences such as increased living costs, job losses, and the transformation of their local culture. This feeling is especially pronounced in small communities, where the bond and solidarity between members are an essential part of daily life. As these areas are occupied by large businesses and tourism investors, the local community is losing its unity and traditional values. In the past, aloha was one of the most important cultural values in Hawaii, symbolizing a warm welcome and harmony between people and nature. However, today, as life becomes more difficult for locals and the problems caused by tourism worsen, aloha is no longer a welcoming phrase, but a reminder of change and loss. It is no longer a symbol of hospitality, but a sign of exhaustion and a call for tourists to reconsider their intrusion into local residents' living spaces. the image of aloha now becomes an open question for tourists visiting Hawaii. Do they understand the problems the local community is facing, or are they just there to enjoy the beauty without considering the difficulties faced by the residents? Hawaii needs to develop a sustainable tourism strategy that not only helps grow the industry, but also protects the interests of the local community. This includes regulating the development of resorts, short-term rental models, and ensuring that the benefits of tourism are equitably distributed to local residents. Hawaii's tourism industry is facing major challenges, particularly in terms of costs, when compared to other global destinations. Travel costs in Hawaii, including airfare, accommodations, and recreational activities, have risen so significantly that many tourists are now seeking more affordable alternatives. In this section, we will analyze the factors driving high travel costs in Hawaii and the changes in tourist behavior in response. One of the main factors making Hawaii less attractive compared to other destinations is its overall high cost. From transportation to on-site spending, Hawaii has become a destination that is not easily accessible for many tourists, especially those with limited budgets. Airfare from major U.S. cities to Hawaii is currently very high, frequently ranging from $400 to $700 for a round-trip flight. This makes many tourists feel that the cost of traveling to Hawaii has become a heavy burden. Additionally, airfare prices rise during peak tourist seasons, making it more challenging to plan a vacation in Hawaii. Hotel or apartment rental prices in Hawaii are much higher than those at other tourist destinations such as Mexico or the Caribbean. A night at a 3-star hotel can cost up to $200 or more, whereas in places like Mexico, tourists can find quality accommodations for just $50–100 per night. The rise of short-term rental properties, like those listed on Airbnb, has also driven up housing prices, creating a stark price difference between Hawaii and other destinations. Food in Hawaii, especially at tourist restaurants, is also expensive, with a typical meal at an average restaurant costing between $20–50 per person. In contrast, at other destinations such as Mexico or the Caribbean, visitors can enjoy quality meals for half the price or even lower. Furthermore, recreational activities such as tours, water sports, and national park visits are priced higher in Hawaii than at other locations. Compared to Hawaii, travel to Mexico offers a much more attractive option. Not only is airfare cheaper, usually between $200 and $400 for a round-trip flight from the US, but tourists can also find affordable lodging and dining options. Moreover, Mexico offers a wide variety of tourism services with high quality, from luxury resorts to beautiful beaches, all at a fraction of the cost of Hawaii. Caribbean islands, especially in the East and West Indies, such as Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas, are also popular destinations with much lower travel costs than Hawaii. Flight prices from the US to these islands typically range from $250 to $500. While accommodation at resorts and hotels is much more affordable, starting from $100 per night. Services in the Caribbean are also diverse and rich, with beautiful beaches and exciting water sports activities, all at a much lower cost than in Hawaii. Costa Rica, with its rich natural landscapes, outdoor activities, and ecotourism, is a popular choice for those seeking a similar experience to Hawaii, but at a much lower cost. Flights to Costa Rica range from $300 to $500, and accommodations at budget resorts or hotels are very reasonable, costing around $50–150 per night. Additionally, Costa Rica is known for activities like hiking, exploring rainforests, and ecotourism tours, all of which are much cheaper than activities in Hawaii. With the rise in travel costs, tourist behavior has changed noticeably. Tourists today are no longer willing to spend large amounts of money to visit expensive destinations like Hawaii and are instead looking for more affordable options. Many tourists have started opting for more budget-friendly destinations like Mexico, Costa Rica, or Caribbean islands instead of Hawaii. These destinations not only offer lower airfare and lodging costs, but also provide similar recreational and tourist activities, from stunning beaches to luxury resorts. A prominent trend in current travel behavior is the preference for domestic destinations or closer alternatives to save on costs. Locations such as California, Florida, and southern and southeastern U.S. coastal areas are attracting tourists with more affordable costs and more diverse tourism services. Tourists are also more likely to seek all-inclusive travel packages, which include airfare, accommodation, and activities. These packages help them save money and easily manage their vacation budget. This shift creates a move from self-planned travel to group or tour travel options, where tourism services are packaged and cost-reduced. As the global tourism industry faces numerous challenges, visa policies and border control measures, particularly in the United States, have become crucial factors that significantly impact the flow of international tourists. One of the most notable changes in recent times has been the increase in visa fees for tourists from major countries, including India, China, and Mexico. This policy, while aimed at regulating the flow of immigrants to the U.S., has sparked mixed reactions and has had a notable effect on the international tourism industry. Under the new regulations, visitors from countries such as India, China, and Mexico will have to pay an additional $50 visa fee upon entering the U.S. This is a decision with wide-reaching effects, as these countries are key contributors to international tourism to the U.S., particularly for major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Hawaii. Both India and China have been among the largest sources of tourists to the U.S. in recent years. With their large populations and rapidly growing economies, tourists from these countries have contributed significantly to the U.S. tourism economy, especially in areas like shopping, sightseeing, and participating in cultural activities. However, with the increase in the visa fee by $50, tourists from these countries may reconsider their travel plans, especially as other travel options with lower visa fees, such as European destinations or Southeast Asia, become more appealing. Mexico, a neighboring country to the U.S. and also an important source of tourists, has historically had special visa agreements with the U.S. However, the increase in visa fees will raise the cost of travel for Mexican citizens. This may lead to a decrease in the number of Mexican tourists visiting the U.S., with some potentially choosing closer destinations like the Caribbean or Central America. The increase in visa fees is one of the factors contributing to the decline in international tourists visiting the U.S. However, it's not just the visa fee that is a concern. Strict border control policies also play an important role in changing the behavior of international tourists. After the COVID-19 pandemic, U.S. border control policies became more stringent, with many complicated regulations and procedures for international visitors. Requirements like COVID-19 tests, proof of financial support, or additional documentation have made it harder to enter the U.S. This not only creates a significant barrier for tourists, but also forces them to reconsider whether the U.S. is the right destination, especially when other destinations offer easier entry procedures and lower visa fees. The number of international tourists to the U.S. has declined in recent years, and the change in visa policies and tighter border controls is likely to worsen this situation. Tourists from countries like India, China, and Mexico, key tourism markets, may feel less inclined to visit the U.S. due to the complicated procedures and high costs. Countries like Canada, Europe, or Asian destinations like Japan and South Korea are emerging as more attractive alternatives, offering more reasonable costs and simpler entry procedures. In response to the strict visa policies and border control measures, many tourists have started turning to other destinations less affected by stringent regulations. European Union countries, the Caribbean region, or Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia are becoming increasingly popular due to their flexible visa requirements and more affordable costs. One of the regions most affected by the decline in international tourists is Hawaii. Hawaii, as a popular tourist destination, relies heavily on tourist arrivals from countries such as Japan, China, and other Southeast Asian nations. The decline in international visitors to the U.S., combined with the higher visa fees and complicated entry procedures, will create even more significant challenges for Hawaii's tourism industry and regions dependent on international tourism. The model of sustainable tourism is becoming an increasingly important trend in the tourism industry, not only to protect the environment, but also to ensure long-term benefits for local communities. In Hawaii, particularly in Maui, Ecotourism policies and the Maui campaign have been implemented to attract tourists back after natural disasters and the decline in tourism. However, while sustainable tourism offers clear benefits for the environment and communities, it also has a significant impact on local workers, pushing them to adapt to a new tourism model, sometimes with disruptions. Hawaii, especially Maui, has begun implementing several sustainable tourism strategies to protect the natural environment and preserve local culture while still attracting tourists. Ecotourism policies focus on minimizing the negative impact of tourism on nature, such as limiting tourist numbers in conservation areas, reducing emissions from transportation, and encouraging tourists to participate in environmental activities like beach cleanups or ecotourism tours. One notable initiative is the Maui campaign, launched with the aim of attracting tourists back to Maui after the devastating Lahaina wildfire. Maui promotes Maui as a sustainable tourism destination, where visitors can not only explore the island's beautiful natural landscapes, but also engage in environmental protection activities, support the local community, and learn about Hawaiian traditional culture. These ecotourism activities help minimize negative impacts while also creating meaningful travel experiences that connect tourists with the community and environment. The sustainable tourism model has a broad impact on local communities. While the goal of this model is to protect natural resources and maintain sustainable development for tourist areas, it also creates significant changes in how the tourism industry operates and affects the lives of local residents. Sustainable tourism strategies help protect natural areas, reduce pollution, and preserve ecosystems. These activities not only maintain the beauty of the landscape, but also improve the quality of life for local residents, especially those who rely on agriculture, fishing, and industries related to natural resources. Campaigns like Maui encourage tourists to participate in activities such as tree planting, wildlife protection, or engaging in environmental restoration projects. This not only strengthens community awareness, but also provides opportunities for tourists to contribute to the sustainable development of the area. While sustainable tourism brings many benefits for the environment and community, it also presents challenges for local workers. Workers in the tourism industry, including those in hotels, restaurants, transportation services, and ancillary sectors, may face changes in the way they work and new skill requirements. One potential benefit of the sustainable tourism model is the creation of new jobs in industries related to environmental protection, ecotourism, and community tourism activities. These jobs can help improve income for workers, especially those in areas with limited job opportunities. However, for these jobs to truly benefit workers, they must be trained in new skills related to ecotourism and environmental management. Sustainable tourism encourages the development of smaller-scale and community-based tourism instead of large resorts or traditional tourism services. This could lead to changes in how businesses in the tourism industry are organized and operate. Workers may have to adapt to new job requirements, such as developing skills in organizing ecotourism events, guiding tourists in community activities, or managing nature conservation projects. While sustainable tourism offers many new opportunities, workers in traditional tourism may face difficulties. Large hotels, restaurants, or large-scale tourism services may need to downsize or shift to more environmentally friendly business models, leading to staff reductions or changes in their operations. This could result in some workers in traditional tourism industries facing unemployment or having to change careers. Hawaii, one of the world's most popular tourist destinations, is currently facing unprecedented challenges in its tourism industry. The decline in tourist numbers, the rising cost of living, and changes in tourism policies have raised significant questions about the future of the island chain and the tourism industry in the U.S. Will Hawaii remain the beloved tourist paradise? Or will it become an exclusive destination only for the wealthy? And will the current policies help revive the island's economy, or will they cause further harm? Hawaii has long been a symbol of American tourism, with stunning natural landscapes, golden beaches, and a unique culture. However, in recent years, the cost of living, particularly housing prices, has skyrocketed, making life more difficult for local residents. At the same time, tourism policies such as higher visa fees, increased border control, and the rise of luxury resorts are leading to a concerning reality. Hawaii could become a destination reserved for the rich. The increasing number of luxury resorts and short-term rental properties, like those on Airbnb, has driven up housing prices in Hawaii, making it unaffordable for local residents. This could result in high-income tourists from countries like the US, Japan, and China becoming the primary visitors to Hawaii, while local residents are pushed out due to the lack of affordable housing. If this trend continues, Hawaii may lose its appeal to many middle-class tourists and become an exclusive high-end destination for a small segment of society. However, there is also a positive outlook that Hawaii can reinvent itself as a tourism paradise for everyone. With sustainable tourism policies, enhanced resource management, and the creation of more meaningful travel experiences rather than focusing solely on commercial and luxury tourism development. The current policies, including higher visa fees, strict border controls, and a focus on sustainable tourism development, will have a profound impact on Hawaii's economy and the tourism industry in the US. While sustainable tourism strategies like Maui could help attract environmentally conscious tourists, the policies of increased visa fees and stringent travel controls could negatively affect the tourism sector. The increase in visa fees for tourists from countries like India, China, and Mexico could lead to a decline in the number of visitors, especially as the overall cost of travel has also risen. This might cause tourists to seek alternatives with lower visa fees, such as European countries, Mexico, or the Caribbean islands. If the number of visitors decreases, Hawaii's tourism industry will face a significant revenue drop, directly impacting workers in hospitality, restaurants, transportation, and related sectors. Strict border control policies and COVID-19 testing requirements could create additional barriers for international visitors. Not only will this make it harder to attract tourists, but it also puts Hawaii in fierce competition with other destinations that have simpler entry procedures. This may cause Hawaii to lose its appeal to international visitors, particularly from major tourism markets like China and Japan. While sustainable tourism can help protect the environment and sustain the economy in the long run, the transition from mass tourism to ecotourism may face challenges in the initial stages. Small businesses and workers in traditional tourism may experience disruptions as the tourism industry shifts, and without proper preparation, these policies could lead to job losses, reduced income, and major changes in the industry structure. Hawaii will face an uncertain future, with strong competition from other destinations and changes in the tourism sector. To maintain its position as one of the world's top tourist destinations, Hawaii must carefully balance sustainable tourism development with creating an accessible tourism environment, ensuring that policies do not increase costs or create difficulties for workers or tourists. Policies supporting visitors from developing countries and reducing travel costs can help grow the tourism industry without harming the local community. Initiatives like ecotourism, community tourism, and environmental conservation activities will create new opportunities for workers, driving more sustainable and fair development for the community. To compensate for the decline in traditional tourists, Hawaii needs to explore new tourism markets, particularly from regions like Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Northern Europe. Creative marketing strategies and building a fresh image for the island are crucial to attracting international visitors. Before we end today's video, let's reflect on a big question. Can tourism in Hawaii and the US tourism industry recover and thrive again in the future? Or will the current policies make things worse, turning tourism into something only accessible for the wealthy few? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this issue. Share your opinions in the comments below. What do you think about the future of tourism in Hawaii? And do you believe the sustainable tourism model can truly help the local community? All viewpoints are valuable, and we're excited to engage in this fascinating conversation with you. If you found this video helpful and want to stay updated on more insightful stories about tourism and related industry issues, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future videos. And please like and share this video so your friends can join the conversation too. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Find these resort fees are disgusting.
You probably never imagined that a single offhand comment could alter an entire industry like tourism. However, after a controversial statement, the US tourism sector has faced a major shock. Losing nearly $30 billion in revenue from Canadian visitors, America is now dealing with the consequences of political decisions. While cities like Florida and Las Vegas remain as charming as ever, the decline in Canadian tourists has directly impacted hotels, stores, and famous landmarks. This change serves as a reminder that political decisions can have far-reaching effects on everyday citizens, especially in the tourism industry. So, the question is, can the U.S. restore its strong tourism relationship with Canada, or will the tourism sector suffer long-term losses? What are your thoughts on this? If you agree with the impact of politics on U.S. tourism, comment 1 below. If you don't agree, drop a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Tourism in the U.S. has experienced significant fluctuations in recent years, and one of the most notable factors has been the sharp decline in visitors from Canada. Popular U.S. destinations like Florida, Las Vegas, Buffalo, and Maine have long been top choices for Canadian tourists, contributing significantly to the U.S. tourism revenue. However, changes in policy and security issues have led to a dramatic drop in the number of Canadian visitors. For years, Canadian tourists have played a crucial role in the U.S. tourism industry. Not only is Canada a major market with millions of visitors annually, but Canadians also make substantial contributions to the economy of large U.S. cities. Cities like Buffalo, near the border, have always been favorites for Canadian tourists, with short trips and considerable spending at stores, hotels, and restaurants. However, a series of political events have led to a noticeable shift. Statistics show a sharp 37% drop in Canadian visitors at border checkpoints and a 26% decline in international flights. This is not just a number, but a warning sign of a change in international tourism dynamics. Key reasons include political tensions between the two countries, new border policies, and the sense of insecurity felt by some tourists when visiting the U.S. The decline in Canadian tourism has had serious consequences for the U.S. tourism economy. Hotel and shop owners in major destinations like Las Vegas, Maine, and Buffalo have shared the difficulties they face. Revenue has dropped to the point where hotels have had to reduce room rates, and some stores have cut staff to maintain operations. Small business owners report a 30% drop in revenue, a figure that cannot be ignored in the tourism industry. Hotel owners at major resorts in Florida and Las Vegas also report that Canadian visitors accounted for a significant portion of their international guests. Not only did they contribute to direct revenue from room bookings, but Canadian tourists also spent on services such as dining, shopping, and entertainment, contributing to the development of various service industries in these regions. Now their absence has created a significant gap that businesses need to find ways to fill. This event clearly highlights the importance of maintaining stable diplomatic relations between countries, especially those with strong tourism exchanges like the US and Canada. Decisions in politics and changes in border policies can have far-reaching impacts on the tourism economy, which in turn affects industries reliant on international guests. The U.S. tourism industry can learn from this decline in Canadian visitors about the importance of not being overly dependent on a single source of tourists. Instead of focusing solely on traditional tourism markets like Canada, the U.S. should expand its marketing strategy to target emerging markets such as Asia, the Middle East, and South America. Creative marketing strategies, special offers for international tourists, and the development of new tourism products can help replace the loss of Canadian tourists. For hotel owners and retailers, the lesson here is the necessity of flexibility in adjusting operations during periods of volatility. Rather than relying on one customer group, tourism businesses need to develop diversified income strategies and find ways to attract new customer segments, especially during crises. Tourism experts argue that quickly and accurately grasping changes in international policies and travel demands is vital to the survival of this industry. Therefore, travel companies and tourism organizations need to have the ability to react flexibly to changes in the international travel market. The adoption of new technologies to monitor tourism trends and interact with tourists can help the industry maintain steady and sustainable growth. The decline in Canadian tourism has proven the importance of maintaining stable international relations and diversifying tourist sources. While this drop in visitors has caused significant losses to the U.S. tourism economy, it also presents an opportunity for the industry to learn and develop more sustainable strategies in the future. Hopefully, this lesson will help U.S. tourism managers and businesses develop a better future where tourism is not only a source of income but also a bridge between countries, fostering peace and shared prosperity. The decline in Canadian visitors has had noticeable effects on the tourism economy in many of the U.S.'s prominent regions. Florida is a prime example of how the absence of Canadian tourists has significantly reduced the local tourism revenue. Florida has always been a top tourist destination, known for its beautiful beaches, amusement parks, and warm tropical climate. Every year, Florida welcomes millions of tourists from around the world, with Canadians accounting for a substantial portion of these visitors. For years, Canadian tourists have contributed significantly to Florida's economy through activities such as renting vacation homes, participating in tours, dining at local restaurants, and shopping at malls. However, in recent years, due to changes in border policies and political developments, the number of Canadian visitors has dropped dramatically. Reports from tourism businesses in Florida show that the absence of Canadian tourists has led to a noticeable decline in revenue. Hotels and resorts have seen lower occupancy rates, while local shops and restaurants are no longer experiencing the strong spending habits of Canadian tourists. These visitors typically come to Florida during the winter to escape the cold back home and are willing to spend on long-term activities, from renting vacation homes to dining out and shopping at large stores. In the past, Canadian tourists not only came to Florida for sightseeing, but also spent more on long-term services. Canadian families often rented vacation homes or apartments for the entire winter, spending large amounts on dining at local restaurants, as well as participating in recreational activities such as boating, visiting amusement parks, or taking local tours. These expenditures contributed significantly to the maintenance of restaurants, retail stores, and entertainment services in Florida. However, the absence of Canadian tourists has drastically changed spending habits. Families who once spent lavishly on long-term activities are now more cautious or have stopped coming to Florida altogether, resulting in a decline in spending. Instead of staying for long periods at resorts, many tourists now only visit for short durations or seek alternative destinations with lower costs or fewer political impacts. As the number of Canadian tourists has decreased, restaurants, retail stores, and entertainment services in Florida have been faced with a severe revenue drop. Restaurants, which have long depended on international visitors, especially Canadians, have seen significant decreases in customer numbers. Not only have revenues fallen, but restaurants have also had to adjust their employee working hours to align with the new situation. This has led to many employees not earning enough to maintain their livelihoods, and some stores have had to reduce staff or cut hours, which impacts service quality and the viability of businesses. Retail stores are no exception. Large shopping malls in Florida, which were popular destinations for Canadian tourists, are now witnessing a drop in revenue. Famous brands and souvenir shops are facing a decline in customers, especially during peak tourist seasons. This creates a vicious cycle where lower revenues result in insufficient budgets to sustain operations or expand businesses. To cope with the absence of Canadian tourists, regions like Florida need to find ways to diversify their tourist sources and enhance their marketing strategies. Instead of focusing solely on one specific customer group, tourism businesses should explore new markets, such as countries in Asia, Europe, or South America, where there is significant potential for tourism growth. In addition, flexible tourism policies and attractive offers can help draw international visitors, particularly during difficult times. Furthermore, businesses need to adjust their strategies to align with changing consumer behavior. Increasing investment in online services, developing long-term travel products, and creating special promotions can help maintain a stable flow of tourists and mitigate the impact of the absence of Canadian visitors. The decline in Canadian tourism is not only a warning about the impact of politics on the tourism industry, but also an opportunity for U.S. tourism businesses to reassess sustainable development strategies. Changes in spending habits and the drop in revenue are factors that need to be carefully considered, and from this, businesses can learn how to be flexible and creative to survive and thrive in this ever-changing environment. The significant decline in Canadian tourists has had profound consequences, not only for major cities like Florida and Las Vegas, but also for border towns and small communities, where international tourism, especially from Canada, plays a crucial role in sustaining the local economy. Border cities such as Buffalo, Maine, and Vermont have long been popular tourist destinations for Canadian visitors. Due to their favorable geographic locations, these cities have frequently welcomed large numbers of Canadian tourists, especially during holiday seasons and extended vacations. Canadian visitors not only come to these areas for sightseeing, but also spend generously on services like shopping, dining, and accommodations. However, the recent decrease in Canadian visitors has created serious impacts on the economies of these border cities. Retail stores, restaurants, and entertainment services, which have heavily relied on Canadian tourists, now face a dramatic drop in customer numbers. Retail shops are seeing significant revenue losses as they no longer have Canadian tourists willing to spend on high-end items or local specialty products. Losing such a large number of customers, especially international ones, has led many stores and restaurants to struggle with their operations. Small shops in border areas that once relied on Canadian tourist spending are now facing closures or reductions in staff hours. Restaurants with significantly fewer customers are unable to maintain their workforce, forcing them to reduce hours or eliminate non-essential services to save costs. This situation not only causes economic damage, but also affects the livelihoods of those working in the service industry. Restaurant owners and small store owners are faced with difficult decisions about whether to maintain their staff or shut down, leading to fewer job opportunities in these communities. Small communities near the border, which rely heavily on the tourism industry, have been deeply and permanently affected by this decline. The reduction in Canadian visitors has not only impacted small businesses, but also directly influenced the income of local residents. In small towns, many people depend on tourism-related jobs such as hotel staff, tour guides, or retail workers. When Canadian tourists are no longer visiting, these jobs vanish, leading to increased unemployment and significant income reductions in these communities. Furthermore, some local investment plans, such as building new tourism infrastructure or expanding resort services, have been delayed or canceled. Investors, who had hoped for an influx of international tourists, are now forced to adjust their plans to cope with the uncertainty of tourism income. The absence of Canadian tourists has forced service and retail companies to reduce staff. The income loss and lack of job opportunities not only affect those directly employed in tourism, but also have a wider impact on the overall economy of border towns. Workers unable to find new jobs in the area are facing difficulties, as most available jobs are tied to the tourism sector. Local families are facing financial hardship due to the loss of stable income. Many families have to cut back on spending for essential needs such as food, healthcare, and education, creating a vicious cycle that is hard to break. The income reduction not only affects the quality of life, but also hinders the long-term development of these communities. Business owners and investors in border areas have had to adjust their investment and resort plans. Previously, they expected increased investment in infrastructure and services to cater to the large number of Canadian tourists. However, the current situation has forced them to pause or postpone these projects. Plans to build new hotels, resorts, or amusement parks have been delayed due to concerns over the decline in international tourist numbers and the unstable economic climate. Moreover, the absence of Canadian tourists has also impacted local recreational activities. Border areas, once famous for their tours, outdoor activities, and special events, are no longer attracting the same level of visitors. This not only reduces the area's appeal, but also creates challenges for future tourism development plans. The decline in Canadian tourists has had a severe impact not only on major cities, but also on border towns and small communities. What do you think about this situation? Can these communities find solutions to cope with these changes and recover their economies? Comment 1 if you agree, or 0 if you disagree. Enjoy the video and don't forget to like, share, and leave us a subscription to support the channel and continue following interesting stories about the impact of tourism and the ongoing economic challenges. In recent years, a strong boycott movement has emerged in Canada against American products, which has become a significant factor impacting the U.S. economy, especially in export industries. Canadian consumers' actions, such as refusing to spend money on American food products, wines, and whiskeys, have led to a substantial shift in consumption habits and severely affected certain U.S. industries. One of the key drivers behind the boycott in Canada is the refusal to purchase American products. Canadians have started to avoid spending money on American-made goods, particularly food products, wines, and whiskeys. This movement is largely driven by political tensions and dissatisfaction with U.S. government policies. The Canadian community has demonstrated its opposition by actively avoiding American-made food products or brands of wine, reflecting discontent with U.S. decisions. In addition to directly boycotting American products, many Canadians have sought alternatives, opting for domestic products or those from other countries. Canadian brands and manufacturers have benefited from this shift as consumers return to their homegrown products, creating a new cash flow in the local economy. The boycott is not just a rejection of American products. It is also a powerful patriotic statement by Canadians. One of the ways consumers carry this out is through scanning barcodes on products before purchasing them. Mobile apps have been developed to help consumers check the origins of products, allowing them to make purchasing decisions based on a sense of patriotism. The development of these apps has changed the shopping habits of many people. Some communities have even organized campaigns to encourage Canadians to only buy domestic products or items from countries without political disputes with Canada. This situation not only affects American businesses, but also creates a powerful wave of consumer action in Canada, impacting markets for American exports. One of the most affected industries from this boycott movement is the American wine industry. The Canadian boycott of American wines has led to a more than 60% drop in wine exports to Canada. Canada has long been an important market for the U.S. wine industry, but changes in Canadian consumption habits have dramatically reduced sales for American wine producers. Famous wine brands from regions like Napa Valley, California, once popular in Canada, now face a sharp decline in consumption. This impact is felt not only by small wine producers, but also by large companies as they face revenue and profit losses. The American wine industry has not only lost a large portion of the Canadian market, but also faces increasing competition from countries like Chile, Argentina, and European nations, which are ramping up exports to the Canadian market. This situation presents a significant challenge for American wine producers in maintaining their market position internationally. The Canadian boycott is not just a temporary reaction, but may create long-lasting effects on the U.S. economy. When American products lose support from a large market like Canada, it not only affects specific industries, but also creates a consumer backlash that could spread to other countries, especially in the context of globalization and interconnected economies. The U.S. export industry, particularly in food, wine, and consumer goods, will face major challenges in regaining market share and rebuilding international consumer trust. Effective marketing strategies and the maintenance of stable diplomatic relationships between nations will be crucial in preventing boycott movements from spreading and causing long-term damage to the economy. The boycott of American products by Canadians has had severe consequences for U.S. industries, especially in the food, wine, and consumer goods sectors. The patriotic actions of Canadians, through avoiding American products and seeking alternatives, have created a significant shift in consumption habits and deeply impacted the U.S. economy. U.S. businesses and manufacturers will need to develop flexible solutions to cope with this situation, from creating effective marketing strategies to maintaining stable diplomatic relations with international partners. Tourism has always played a crucial role in the U.S. economy, and in recent years, shifts in consumer habits and tourist demographics have significantly impacted some of the nation's top tourist destinations. A clear example of this is the shift in cities like Las Vegas, which have moved from primarily catering to Canadian tourists to seeking new markets such as China and Mexico. However, this shift has not been easy and is filled with challenges. In the past, Las Vegas and many other popular U.S. tourist cities were heavily reliant on large numbers of Canadian visitors. Due to the proximity and stable diplomatic relations, Canadian tourists became a key part of the tourism revenue for these cities. They regularly visited the U.S. for vacations, participated in entertainment activities, shopped, and spent considerable amounts on travel services. However, changes in border policies and political factors have drastically reduced the number of Canadian tourists, forcing cities like Las Vegas to look for alternative markets. China and Mexico have become two potential markets that U.S. tourist cities are now targeting. China, with its large population and growing middle class, is seen as a promising market for U.S. tourism. Additionally, Mexico, with its geographic proximity and stable flow of tourists, is also an important option for U.S. cities. However, the shift from Canadian tourists to these new markets is not a simple process. These markets not only have different characteristics and consumption habits, but also pose several challenges related to language, culture, and how to tailor tourism services to meet their needs. Canadian tourists were very familiar with U.S. tourism services. Travel between the two countries was easy and affordable, making Canadian tourists a loyal customer base for U.S. tourist destinations. But shifting focus to markets like China and Mexico is not without its difficulties. Chinese tourists, despite their strong financial potential, have different needs and consumption habits. They often seek unique experiences that differ from what they have back home. Moreover, many Chinese tourists tend to travel in groups or through large tour packages, requiring U.S. travel companies to adapt their tours and entertainment activities to accommodate these preferences. Mexico, while geographically and culturally closer, has its own distinct travel habits. Mexican tourists tend to seek more local destinations, lower costs, and family-oriented experiences. Adapting marketing strategies to attract Mexican tourists requires a deep understanding of this market and creating more suitable tourism products. The shift from Canadian tourists to new markets like China and Mexico also reflects a broader change in the consumption habits of international travelers. Canadian tourists, who were accustomed to U.S. tourism services, often spent more on long vacations, renting vacation homes, dining at upscale restaurants, and participating in high-end entertainment activities. In contrast, tourists from China and Mexico have different consumption patterns. Chinese tourists often look for premium, unique experiences, but also seek more budget-friendly options for independent or small group travel. Meanwhile, Mexican tourists, although culturally similar, tend to look for more budget-conscious services and family or community-based experiences. This requires U.S. travel businesses to adjust their approach and develop products that suit each specific customer group. Travel companies need to build flexible marketing programs and tailor their services to meet the diverse needs and preferences of tourists from these emerging markets. One of the biggest challenges the U.S. tourism industry faces is reclaiming lost customers, particularly Canadian tourists. These tourists were very familiar with U.S. tourism services and could easily return if there are changes in policies or more favorable conditions. However, replacing them with markets like China and Mexico is no simple task. U.S. travel businesses will need to invest heavily in marketing strategies and product improvements to attract back those tourists who have left, while also maintaining their appeal to new markets. This may involve developing special promotions, organizing international events, and creating tourism services that cater to each target market group. The future of U.S. tourism is facing significant challenges as it shifts from Canadian tourists to new markets like China and Mexico. This transition is not an easy one and requires tourism businesses to quickly adapt to changes in consumer habits and the needs of international tourists. While seeking alternative markets is necessary, it is crucial for travel businesses to develop sustainable strategies to maintain their appeal to traditional tourists, while also expanding their offerings to meet the needs of emerging markets. In today's political environment, decisions related to tariffs, foreign policies, and sanctions may yield political victories for leaders or governments. However, these victories can sometimes result in significant economic damage, particularly affecting ordinary citizens, especially those working in small businesses and service industries. Amid tariff wars and other political decisions, labor groups such as hotel owners, restaurant staff, and taxi drivers are the most directly and severely impacted. Tariff wars are often used by politicians as a tool to protect domestic industries or to apply pressure on other countries. However, while politicians may believe they've achieved their objectives of safeguarding domestic industries or pressuring international rivals, these decisions can have severe repercussions on the U.S. economy, particularly for ordinary people and small businesses. When tariffs are applied to imported goods, the prices of these products rise, leading to higher living costs for the general public. This impact is especially severe for low and middle-income individuals, who spend a large portion of their income on everyday consumer goods. A prime example of this is when tariffs were imposed on products from China, leading to increased prices for electronics, consumer goods, and food, creating a significant financial burden for lower-income households. One of the groups most directly impacted by political decisions is workers in the service and tourism industries. Hotel owners, restaurant staff, and taxi drivers are the most vulnerable when international tourist numbers drop, or when tourists reduce spending due to trade and diplomatic policies. Hotel owners. Political decisions, especially those related to travel restrictions or tariffs on tourism services, can lead to a sharp decline in international visitors. Hotel owners in cities reliant on international tourists, particularly from countries affected by tariff wars, may suffer major losses. A drop in the number of visitors forces hotels to lower room prices, cut spending on services, or even lay off staff to maintain operations. Restaurant staff. The restaurant industry also suffers heavily when tourist numbers decline. Policies such as tariffs on imported goods can increase food and service costs, making customers hesitant to spend. Restaurant staff, particularly in small establishments or those located in tourist-heavy areas, may experience reduced working hours or even job loss. This not only impacts their income but also harms the local economy in tourist areas. Taxi drivers. Similarly, taxi drivers and other transport services are impacted when tourist numbers drop. Policies that restrict or limit international travel or increase travel costs may force taxi drivers to face reduced income. These political decisions affect not only taxi drivers, but also related services such as freight transport, tour buses, and other transport industries. Wider economic impact. The effects of political decisions are not confined to specific sectors. They have far-reaching consequences for the U.S. economy. When small businesses such as restaurants, hotels, and transport services are affected, it leads to a decrease in revenue and profits, which in turn impacts their ability to sustain operations and create jobs. Reduced consumer spending also leads to declines in production and distribution in other industries. This can cause a ripple effect, with small businesses cutting staff or reducing production capacity. When people lose jobs or face income reductions, they cut back on their own spending, which reduces demand for products and services in the economy, creating a vicious cycle that affects the entire national economy. While political decisions may benefit large industries, they can have devastating consequences for ordinary citizens, especially those working in the service and tourism sectors. Tariff policies and sanctions may drive up prices and reduce international tourism, significantly affecting the income of hotel owners, restaurant staff, and taxi drivers. This does not only impact these sectors, but can also lead to widespread consequences for the U.S. economy as a whole. It is crucial for political decisions to be carefully considered to ensure that the benefits achieved do not come at the expense of ordinary citizens. The decline in Canadian tourism and the widespread boycott of U.S. products by Canadian citizens is not just a temporary financial issue, but a stark reminder of the long-term consequences of political decisions on the U.S. economy. Canada is not just an important trade partner, but also a long-standing ally of the U.S. When political decisions, such as tariffs or sanctions, cause Canadians to turn away from American products and services, it can create a rift in the trade relationship between these two nations. These changes will not only affect financial figures, but also profoundly impact the long-standing trade relations between the U.S. and Canada. Trust, built over many years between citizens and businesses in both countries, could be shaken if political decisions are not carefully considered. This influence goes beyond just reduced revenues. It also signifies a shift in how cooperation and trade will unfold in the future. If this relationship is not maintained and strengthened, it could lead to a decline in the ability to collaborate over the long term between these two major economies. Small businesses in particular, and industries dependent on international trade, will face difficulties in sustaining growth if there is no consensus or stable cooperation between the U.S. and key trade partners like Canada. Will ordinary Americans continue to pay the price for political decisions made far away in Washington? If you were in Canada's position, would you return to the U.S.? Thank you for watching today's video. As we've seen, the decline in tourism and the boycott from Canada impacts not only the economy, but also the long-term relationship between the two nations. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to leave a like and share this video with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button to always stay tuned to exciting videos and important stories that affect our lives. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thank you so much. Have you ever noticed the shockwaves shaking up the U.S. tourism industry in 2021? 8 major American brands, once considered strong symbols of success, are now teetering on the edge of losing billions in revenue. What could be causing these once unstoppable names to fail on their own home turf? It's not economic downturns or pandemics. It's soaring prices, security concerns, and visa barriers. While once bustling shopping streets are now eerily quiet and casinos that were once packed with players around the world now stand still. 5 countries are quietly celebrating as they welcome the very tourists who used to flock to the U.S. You might be able to guess some of these brands, but a few will undoubtedly surprise you. If you skip the final part of this video, you'll miss the most crucial clue about new travel mandates quietly taking shape. The bigger question here is, how will this trend reshape the U.S. tourism industry and the job market? And don't forget, now you can walk right into Disney without waiting in line. But the reason isn't because you have a priority pass or know someone at the gate. This huge shift is happening right before our eyes. As President Donald Trump once said, "We need to make America great again. And a big part of that is keeping our strength in the tourism industry." So what do you think about this trend? How do you think these changes will reshape America's tourism industry? The reality is, no one has to wait anymore. 10 years ago, a trip to Disney was the highlight of the year for thousands of families. But now, many have completely missed out on that experience. And this isn't just gossip. Online videos constantly show that Disney parks are eerily empty, to the point where Disney characters have to run out and personally invite guests to join in the fun. International visitors to Disney have dropped over 20% since 2019, while the cost of a single-day ticket has now reached $150, not including food or souvenirs. Sometimes you could spend that same amount on a Lego set and even sign up for a month of Netflix. But price isn't the only reason why tourists are turning away. Many visitors have shared, "I went to Disney once, came back, and nothing had changed. It was just way more expensive." Meanwhile, Disney Tokyo continues to roll out new attractions, and Disney Shanghai has even transformed the entire park into a Broadway-style spectacle under the open sky. Surprisingly, even Americans are now willing to fly halfway across the world to experience these parks. What's shocking is that the ticket prices aren't cheaper, but everyone agrees it's worth every penny. With the same budget, families can enjoy a foreign vacation, experience a fresh take on Disney, and show off their travels to friends and family. This year, we went to Japan. This is the biggest problem Disney faces today. Not just losing visitors to the parks, but also losing customers to destinations outside of the U.S. If you're from the generation that took your kids to Disney in the 80s and 90s, you'll feel the change. A once shining icon is now slowly fading like an old tree in the garden. Still standing, but its green leaves are thinning. So, what about you? If you had $5,000 for a family vacation, would you choose Disney World in Florida or Disney Sea in Tokyo? Your answer may reveal more about your priorities in life than you think. Do you remember the legendary slogan of Las Vegas? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. However, what's happening now is that what happens in Vegas is no longer staying there. The truth is, customers are slowly but surely leaving this iconic city. If you don't believe it, take a moment to watch this video. The once bustling entertainment spots are now so quiet that you could run through them without bumping into anyone. Just a few years ago, Las Vegas was still considered the entertainment capital of the world. The casinos were brightly lit with neon lights, and there were long lines of people waiting day and night to watch spectacular shows by stars like Celine Dion. Fremont Street, known for its lively music performances, was always filled with tourists. But today, according to the latest reports, MGM Resorts casino revenue has dropped by over 15% since 2019. The number of international visitors has fallen so dramatically that some casinos have had to close during the week, something that never happened before. People often blame the prices. Hotel rooms skyrocketing, expensive tickets for premium shows, and service fees that seem to increase every year. But that's not the full story. The bigger problem is that Las Vegas is no longer the only option for those seeking entertainment experiences. Cities like Macau, Singapore, and Dubai have built even more modern and luxurious resorts. And, more importantly, they don't charge $8 for a bottle of water like Vegas does. Here's an interesting statistic. Macau is now attracting double the number of high-end tourists as Las Vegas, and many of them are Americans. They fly halfway around the world just to find something different in life. But they're willing to spend big bucks on these far-flung resorts while Las Vegas struggles to bring them back. Of course, MGM isn't sitting idly by. They've started experimenting with non-gambling experiences, from high-end dining events to international concerts and full wellness services, all aimed at attracting families and younger generations. After all, not everyone who visits Vegas is there for a blackjack table or a deck of cards. But there are many who are willing to pay for experiences that make them feel special and different. Could this be the way to restore Vegas's former charm? A place that once had people fighting to get in the doors of its casinos? Imagine a Vegas that isn't just about gambling, but also a hub for culture, entertainment, and wellness. A Vegas where families can find their own joy, where young people can experience a refreshing lifestyle without worrying about sky-high costs. And above all, Vegas will no longer just be a place you visit to play. It will be a place you go to live, to enjoy, and to feel the transformation every single day. Today, you can easily move around stores, even dance the tango down the aisles without bumping into anyone. Remember the golden days when Macy's and Bloomingdale's were must-visit destinations for international tourists coming to the U.S. Shopping there wasn't just about spending money. It was an emotional experience. The annual holiday sales, the suitcase full of gifts, and then going home to tell friends all about it. All of these created unforgettable memories for shopping enthusiasts. However, things are changing. According to retail industry reports, revenue from shopping by tourists has decreased by as much as 25% in recent years. The main reason is the significant drop in international visitors coming to the U.S. Shopping habits have shifted, and instead of rushing into bustling shopping malls, tourists are now seeking cultural experiences, exploring unique cuisines, or engaging in outdoor activities to better understand the local culture. Many tourists have realized that goods in the U.S. are no longer cheaper than elsewhere. In fact, in some cases, products in the U.S. are much more expensive than in Europe or Asia. Additionally, high sales taxes, oversized luggage fees, and other additional costs make shopping at malls far less attractive. A woman from Toronto shared her story. "I used to go to New York every year just to shop at Macy's. Back then, I always came home with at least 3 suitcases full of amazing items. But now, I feel lucky if I can just buy a small silk scarf for my granddaughter. Everything I need is available in Canada, and many of the things I've bought were cheaper when I was in Italy last year." Her story isn't just a personal experience, but reflects the mindset of millions of other customers. People who once saw shopping in the U.S. as a joy, but are now looking for alternatives. This reality is not just a change in shopping habits, but a shift in how tourists experience the U.S. Shopping is no longer the main attraction. Instead, they are seeking unique experiences, exploring new cultures, and enjoying memorable moments at restaurants, cafes, or places that aren't found in traditional travel guides. This not only reflects a change in tourists' needs, but also presents a major shock to the U.S. retail economy, which once built its global reputation on unforgettable shopping trips. So the big question is, can the U.S. recover its retail industry? Or will we witness a major transformation, where new experiences become the primary consumer trend, replacing the image of traditional shopping malls? Hilton Hotels and Resorts, once a symbol of luxury and prestige, is facing a concerning reality that few could have predicted. Previously seen as the pinnacle of sophistication and beloved by travelers from around the world, Hilton is now witnessing an increasing number of vacant rooms, even during Florida's peak tourist season. A housekeeping staff member at a Hilton hotel in Florida shared that last summer. She almost had to work overtime every week, but this year, her schedule has been cut down to only 3 days a week. This isn't just coincidental. The number of international guests at Hilton has significantly decreased. There are weeks when the hotel has only a few rooms available. She mentioned that she has never seen Hilton so empty. According to STR, Hilton's occupancy rate at popular tourist spots in the US has dropped by as much as 15% compared to pre-pandemic times, despite a strong recovery in domestic tourism. So why are customers abandoning Hilton? The reasons are not hard to spot. Hotel room rates at Hilton properties have increased by about 25% compared to previous years. And on top of that, many additional service fees have made tourists start seeking more affordable and convenient alternatives. Interestingly, it's not just international guests. Even Americans are gradually shifting to smaller boutique hotels or services like Airbnb in Europe and Asia. These options are not only more affordable, but they also offer travelers unique local experiences. In fact, many loyal Hilton customers admit that they are willing to fly to Portugal or Spain, stay at a similar hotel for just 70% of the price in the US, and enjoy breathtaking scenery and new cultural experiences. To meet this demand, Hilton has started making significant investments in all-inclusive packages, including accommodation, dining, and entertainment, hoping to compete with international resorts. Additionally, Hilton is experimenting with AI-driven personalized services to enhance convenience and draw loyal customers back. These services promise to provide a highly customized shopping and vacation experience, making customers feel like an important part of Hilton's service ecosystem. Could this be the key for Hilton to regain its global appeal and rise above this crisis? A world-class tech conference that used to be held in New York has now moved to Lisbon, simply because organizing it is cheaper and more convenient there. It may sound unbelievable, but with the swift and surprising changes in the tourism and service industry, this risk is no longer a distant prospect. Will Hilton and other giants in the tourism industry find new ways to regain their position, or will they remain overshadowed by the changing global market? The answer will undoubtedly have a profound impact on the future of the travel and leisure industry. Think back to Marriott's glory days, when they were the undisputed king of the meetings and events industry, and you'll remember the gilded ballrooms in Washington, D.C., the stunning resorts in Hawaii, and the world-class service Marriott provided. For CEOs, politicians, and multi-million-dollar events, Marriott was the go-to destination. But the undeniable truth is that the market has changed, and Marriott is facing a major challenge that they can't ignore. According to the American Hotel and Lodging Association, international conference bookings in the United States have dropped nearly 30% over the past year. And unfortunately, Marriott is one of the brands that has been hit the hardest. What's causing this king to stumble? The answer is cost. It's that simple. Conference room rates in the United States are now 35% higher than in Europe. In addition, hidden service fees and rising catering costs make holding a conference in the US too expensive, making many partners nervous and no longer interested in options here. And it's not just a matter of cost. International companies and even some American companies have started looking for conference locations outside the US. Why? Because holding a conference in famous European cities is now not only cost-effective, but also provides a memorable experience for employees. Instead of holding a conference in New York, many companies are now choosing Barcelona as their destination, with strategy meetings in the morning and relaxing afternoons watching the Mediterranean sunset. Just look at the numbers and you will see the difference. A 3-day conference package in Lisbon costs just $500 per person, a savings of $400,000 or $1,000 compared to hosting a similar event in Chicago, including international airfare. Such a stark difference has Marriott in the US worried as its conference bookings are down while its European locations are soaring. But will Marriott sit back and let customers go? Of course not. It has plans to invest heavily in hybrid meeting technology, combining online and in-person experiences to deliver convenience and retain customers. What's more, Marriott is working to upgrade its conference packages, adding cultural and culinary experiences to enrich the customer journey. With the right strategy, Marriott can still reclaim a valuable portion of its market and continue to be a go-to destination for those looking for more than just work, but also experiences. What about you? If your company needs to host a conference, would you choose Midtown New York with its high costs and the buzz of a big city, or a European coastal city where you can combine work with great relaxation, explore new cultures, and enjoy great scenery? Your answer may reflect part of a larger shift in the travel and events industry, where it is not just about work, but also about life experiences. If major hotel chains are facing a loss of customers due to shifting travel trends, the question is, what about the airline industry? The industry, which relies heavily on business and leisure travel, is also experiencing major changes. Routes that were once familiar, carrying millions of passengers each year to popular destinations, are disappearing. Flights from New York to Honolulu, Los Angeles to Orlando, and transatlantic routes from Boston to Paris were all staples of American travelers' itineraries. But now, they are becoming distant memories. According to data from OAG, more than a dozen long-haul international and domestic routes on American Airlines and Delta have been cut back sharply in the past year due to a significant drop in passengers. It's not just a lack of customers, it's a change in American travel habits. Today, customers are increasingly turning to international low-cost carriers, willing to accept longer layovers to save a few $100s per ticket. The convenience of direct flights is becoming less attractive when compared to the cheaper fares offered by international airlines, and this is forcing major airlines to rethink their strategies. A clear example is the London to Orlando route. Once a legendary route, with European tourists flocking to Disney every year. However, the route has now been discontinued, with European tourists heading to Disney parks in Tokyo and Paris instead of the US. Even more heartbreaking is that before the COVID-19 pandemic, the New York to Honolulu route used to be at 92% capacity during peak season. But this year, that figure has dropped to below 70%, forcing airlines to reduce frequencies and raise fares to cover losses. This has led to many passengers switching to other airlines to save money. This is even more remarkable when we look at a strange trend. Americans are now choosing to fly Qatar Airways to Europe and then connecting to Hawaii because the total cost is even lower than a direct flight from the US. Passengers can save hundreds of dollars, and instead of expensive flights on US airlines, they choose convenient and affordable connecting flights on international airlines. To retain customers, American Airlines and Delta have begun experimenting with resort-based flight packages, offering personalized flight experiences with innovative services. But will a fancy meal or free Wi-Fi be enough to save the day? Maintaining their iconic routes will require more than just improving services. To cope with increasing competition from international airlines, major US airlines will have to come up with more creative ways to attract customers back, from improving service to creating unique and memorable flight experiences. So, if it were you, would you choose an expensive non-stop flight on a US airline or a cost-effective connecting flight on an international airline? And if even established airlines like American Airlines and Delta are struggling to retain customers, how much longer will the cruise industry, considered a vacation paradise for many, survive? As travel trends change rapidly, Americans' choice of vacation type will be influenced not only by price, but also by the unique experience each type of travel brings. Stay tuned. When many Americans think of luxury cruises, they immediately picture the giant ships of Carnival Cruise Line or Royal Caribbean, sailing from Miami, the ultimate destination for luxury, sun, wind, and waves. Cruise ships with infinity pools, 24/7 buffets, non-stop entertainment, and long days of enjoying the Caribbean sunshine were once the pinnacle of vacation travel. However, the current story is far from what we imagined. According to a report by CLIA, Cruise Line International Association, the number of cruise ships departing from US ports has decreased by more than 18% compared to 2019. Meanwhile, The number of ships departing from Europe and the Caribbean has increased by nearly 25% over the same period. This reversal raises a big question. Is America's cruise paradise losing its appeal? And the answer is not so hard to guess. Price is the biggest barrier. The cost of a cruise departing from the US has increased dramatically. Port fees are getting higher, and even domestic flights to departure ports are skyrocketing. This has caused many travelers, especially retired Americans, to start looking at other options. For the same budget, they realize that they can fly to Europe, take a Mediterranean cruise, visit Italy, France, and Greece, all beautiful countries, instead of just hanging around the Caribbean. A clear example is a 7-day cruise from Miami to the Bahamas, which costs about $1,200 per person. However, for just $150 more, you can board a Royal Caribbean cruise departing from Barcelona and visit 3 wonderful countries, Italy, France, and Greece, in one itinerary. This has completely changed the perspective of many customers. A trip to the Caribbean may still be appealing, but the Mediterranean is truly unmissable. So Carnival and Royal Caribbean are planning to expand their international cruise lines and upgrade their port experiences. They're looking to add exclusive anchorages, local cultural tours, and partner with celebrity chefs to create unique dining experiences for their guests. These changes are meant to differentiate themselves and hopefully return U.S. cruises to their former glory. So if you had 7 days off, would you choose a familiar Caribbean cruise departing from Miami? Or would you fly to Barcelona and enjoy a Mediterranean cruise, experiencing 3 countries in one trip? It's not just about choosing between 2 destinations. It's about how we view and experience travel. Are you willing to change your perspective to have a more memorable vacation, even if it means crossing an ocean? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Who would have thought that one day the iconic casinos of Atlantic City, once symbols of luxury, prosperity, and pride of the American entertainment industry, would have to be put up for sale? Caesars Entertainment, one of the largest and most prestigious casino corporations in the world, behind a series of famous casinos from Las Vegas to New Orleans, was once a dream destination for the elite and tourists looking for bright lights and lavish parties. But today, the story of Caesars is gradually changing. In recent years, the sharp decline in international visitors is pushing many famous brands into difficult situations. Revenue from international visitors is down more than 20%. Hotel bookings are also constantly decreasing. This is a big shock for a brand that was once a symbol of the American casino industry. Similar to MGM Resorts, Caesars Entertainment is facing fierce competition from more developed international markets. Destinations like Singapore, Macau, and Monte Carlo have become more attractive options for the elite, where guests can not only gamble but also experience personalized service, complimentary suites, and multi-million-dollar promotions in a single night. It is the rising costs of services combined with competition from overseas markets that have forced Caesars to cut staff, close some tables at major casinos, and reduce the number of shows to save costs. But the biggest shock is yet to come. According to reputable sources in the industry, a portion of Caesars Entertainment's assets, its prestigious hotels and casinos, are now in negotiations to be sold to foreign investors. It would be the first time that part of a U.S. casino empire has fallen into foreign hands, a worrying sign of change in the industry. Ironically, Las Vegas, which once proudly declared itself the casino capital of the world, now faces an uncertain future. It may have to continue expanding, at least until its entire casino empire is sold. To retain its appeal, Caesars Entertainment is experimenting with a new model, the multi-entertainment model. Going beyond gambling, Caesars is incorporating a variety of entertainment, from concerts to sporting events to fine dining, all in an effort to attract a new group of customers who come here for more than just gambling. The biggest question, however, remains: will these changes be enough to preserve the soul of the American casino industry, which has long been an irreplaceable symbol of the country? Can the multi-entertainment model sustain and even bring Caesars back to its former glory? And if you are a tourist, would you still want to go to Las Vegas, where there is now more than just gambling, but also a mix of different experiences? Would you continue to choose a traditional casino or the promising new options from international markets? We invite you to follow this journey, discovering the real stories behind the seemingly ordinary headlines. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next content. All information in this video is compiled from trade reports, public data, and official documents as of August 2025. Please note, this video is not intended as political propaganda, is not aimed at any individual or organization, and does not represent any government. Our sole goal is to bring you an insight and help you better understand the major changes that are affecting the U.S. economy and society. We can't just let this go without reflection. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the future of the U.S. casino and tourism industry? Can legacy brands bounce back? Let's discuss. In recent years, the dream of traveling to the U.S. has gradually been overshadowed by growing frustration and disappointment from international travelers. While the U.S. used to symbolize adventure, luxury, and opportunity, visitors from Canada, Europe, and Mexico now find exploring all the country has to offer increasingly difficult and expensive. Hidden fees, complicated travel regulations, and cumbersome customs procedures have left many feeling unwelcome. This shift in sentiment has raised eyebrows and sparked intense discussions globally. Join us as we explore the 7 main reasons why international travelers are rethinking their trips to the U.S. and what this means for the country's once thriving tourism industry. Stay tuned. This isn't just about money. It's about the experience and how it's changing in troubling ways. If you agree with these reasons, don't forget to leave a 1 in the comments. If you think otherwise, leave a 0 to let us know your opinion. Be sure to like and subscribe to support our channel. The United States was once the symbol of the American dream, a dream destination for those wanting to explore the world, experience diverse cultures, and seek life-changing opportunities. However, that dream seems to be fading, turning into an uncomfortable reality for many international visitors. From unexpected fees to cumbersome administrative procedures, the transformation in the U.S. tourism industry is a cautionary tale not just for tourists, but also for the country's travel sector. First, let's look at the costs. Traveling to the U.S. is now not only expensive due to publicly disclosed fees, but also because of hidden costs that continue to rise. If you want to fly to the U.S., don't forget that your ticket might come with additional charges for luggage, seat selection, or even meals on the plane. This not only increases the cost of travel, but also frustrates many visitors who feel forced to pay for things that should be basic services. And if you think hotels are where you can relax after a long flight, be prepared for the increasingly steep resort fees. These charges may not be clearly communicated up front, making tourists feel tricked when their final bill turns out to be much higher than expected. In addition, customs procedures are another factor that exhausts travelers when they arrive in the U.S. Complicated regulations and procedures are making tourists' trips more stressful and no longer as easy as before. Long queues, meticulous luggage checks, and strict questioning at the border make many people feel scrutinized, even unwelcome. This particularly affects tourists from Canada, Europe, and Mexico, where relations between the countries have traditionally been good and convenient. In fact, international tourist spending in the U.S. has dropped by 7% this year, a concerning figure for the country's tourism industry. This decline is not only a result of rising costs, but also the effect of the difficult policies and regulations that travelers face. Many tourists from Canada, Europe, and Mexico are turning away from the U.S., choosing other destinations like Asia, Europe, or nearby countries in the region, where travel costs are more reasonable and procedures easier. The reasons for many people turning away from the U.S. can be explained by 7 key factors. First are the hidden fees that travelers face throughout their journey. Next, the complicated customs procedures and security regulations strip away the comfort tourists expect when coming to the U.S. Moreover, with unstable political decisions and changing tax policies, traveling to the U.S. is no longer an attractive option for many. These factors create an unfriendly environment for tourists, making them feel disrespected and unable to enjoy their vacations. A key lesson to be learned from the current state of U.S. tourism is the need to improve tourism policies, from making costs transparent to simplifying customs procedures. If the U.S. wants to maintain its position as one of the world's top tourist destinations, there needs to be a shift in how tourists are treated. This would not only help reduce unreasonable fees, but also create a more welcoming and accessible environment for international visitors. Another lesson is the influence of politics on the tourism industry. Tax policies and legal changes can have a significant impact on tourists' decisions when choosing their destinations. The government must recognize that tourism is not just an economic sector, but an important part of building the national image. A country cannot thrive in tourism if it does not create an easy and comfortable environment for international visitors. The U.S. must understand that in the age of globalization, travelers can choose any country to visit, and if the difficulties in U.S. tourism are not addressed in time, other countries will be ready to seize this market share. Once tourists feel unfairly treated or taken advantage of, they will not hesitate to seek out other destinations where they feel more comfortable and respected. Finally, the changes in the U.S. tourism situation not only reflect a decline in the number of visitors, but also serve as a wake-up call about how a country faces economic and political challenges. The tourism industry is an essential part of a nation's development, and maintaining its appeal to international tourists requires continuous effort to improve the tourism environment while protecting tourists' rights and simplifying administrative processes and policies. What is happening in the U.S. is a lesson for all countries to carefully consider the balance between short-term economic benefits and building a sustainable, friendly, and expanding tourism sector. Traveling to the United States is no longer just a leisurely vacation. It has become a form of short-term consumer debt. In the past, a round-trip flight from Toronto to Florida was as affordable as buying a rice cooker from Walmart. But now, the price of a plane ticket is equivalent to purchasing a flat-screen TV. And that's just the airfare. If you think the cost ends with the plane ticket, you are mistaken. In reality, everything has increased in price, from hotels to dining services, making a vacation in the U.S. no longer a reasonable option for many international tourists. This phenomenon, known as price shock, is a jarring increase in costs that directly impacts travelers' wallets. Price shock is not only about sudden price hikes, but also the lack of transparency in the additional fees that tourists are expected to pay. Many travelers have complained that they were overcharged at popular tourist destinations. Resort fees, service charges, parking fees, and hidden consumption costs increase the overall price of a trip to the U.S., making tourism less appealing than ever before. According to a recent report by the World Travel and Tourism Council, international tourist spending in the U.S. is expected to decrease by 7% in 2025, equivalent to a loss of around $2.5 billion. While these numbers may seem abstract, they reflect a worrying reality for the U.S. tourism industry. The effects of this decline are not limited to large travel companies, but also extend to millions of workers in the service sector. From bartenders at Las Vegas casinos to tour guides in New York and employees in the hospitality industry, all are facing a significant loss in income. Around 100,000 jobs in the service sector could be lost, creating a shock to the local economies of many major cities across the U.S. The U.S. tourism industry, once one of the largest revenue generators for the country, now faces severe challenges. As travel costs become prohibitive, many international tourists will opt for other destinations where they can get better value for their money. This will not only harm tourism businesses, but also affect the workers in cities that rely on international tourism to sustain their economies. The impact of rising costs goes beyond the tourists themselves and affects the image of the U.S. as an attractive tourist destination. In today's globalized world, travelers have more choices than ever before. And when factors such as high costs, complex procedures, and hidden fees continue to rise, it will be difficult for the U.S. to maintain its position in the hearts of international tourists. Other countries with lower costs and easier procedures will become more appealing alternatives. The lesson here is clear. If the U.S. doesn't quickly adjust its pricing policies and administrative procedures, the tourism industry will face a difficult future. International tourists will no longer choose the U.S. if they feel taken advantage of by unreasonable fees and cumbersome processes. To maintain its attractiveness, the U.S. needs to reduce hidden costs, clarify fees up front, and improve the travel experience for tourists. This will not only help the tourism economy grow, but also protect the service industries that are struggling with the downturn. The U.S. must recognize that tourism is not only an important economic sector, but also a key part of its national image-building strategy. Tourism not only drives economic growth, but also serves as a powerful tool for promoting culture, creating jobs, and attracting investment. Therefore, if pricing policies do not change, the U.S. tourism industry may lose its competitiveness and fail to attract international tourists in the future. As travel costs to the United States continue to rise, many international tourists, especially from Canada, are beginning to feel the financial burden. A recent report reveals that, in just a few months, bookings from Canada to the U.S. have dropped by more than 35%. This shift not only reflects a change in travel preferences, but also a significant shift in the purchasing power of tourists. So why are tourists choosing to leave the U.S. and head to other destinations? Simply put, everything is adding up. A flight from Canada to the U.S. is no longer just expensive due to the ticket price, but also due to the numerous additional fees. Luggage fees, seat selection charges, and especially hotel service fees, even at a budget motel, significantly raise the overall cost of the trip. Even something as simple as a meal can cost an additional 20% in tips, not because the tourists are particularly generous, but because it's automatically added to the bill. Given this situation, U.S. tourism is gradually becoming an unappealing option for many travelers, especially those from countries with lower living standards like Canada. For example, a person living in Toronto who used to drive to Florida every winter to escape the harsh cold had to cancel their trip this year simply because of the high costs. When they tried to book tickets for their family of 4, the total cost increased by $600 due to hidden fees and taxes they were unaware of. As a result, they chose Cuba as an alternative destination, where the costs were much lower and they could still enjoy their vacation. In fact, a one-week all-inclusive vacation in Varadero, Cuba, is now cheaper than a weekend getaway in Miami. This clearly illustrates the cost disparity between the U.S. and other destinations, especially when tourists now have many alternative options. Cuba, with its affordable prices and no hidden fees, has become an attractive destination, even for families that were accustomed to visiting the U.S. As the cost of U.S. travel continues to climb, many tourists are turning away from the country and seeking more reasonably priced destinations. These changes not only affect tourists, but also directly impact the local economy in the U.S., particularly in large cities that rely heavily on international tourism. Local businesses, from restaurants to hotels, will face significant declines in revenue. Those working in the service industry, who depend on international tourists, will bear the brunt of the damage. The key lesson here is that the U.S. tourism industry needs to adjust its pricing policies and taxes to retain tourists. If not, many travelers will continue to search for more affordable destinations, which will severely damage the U.S. tourism economy. The government and U.S. tourism businesses need to reconsider hidden fees and find ways to simplify administrative procedures while offering more transparent and reasonable travel options for international tourists. Moreover, this lesson serves as a reminder for other countries about the importance of maintaining reasonable costs in the tourism industry. Travel policies should carefully balance economic benefits with the comfort of tourists. While increasing hidden fees and taxes may bring short-term revenue, in the long run, it will diminish the appeal of a country like the U.S. in the eyes of international travelers. Remember, in a competitive world, tourists can easily find other destinations that are more affordable and offer a more enjoyable experience. The United States, once the bustling consumer paradise where supermarkets are always lit, stores open 24/7, and Las Vegas never sleeps, has long been a dream destination for tourists worldwide. However, that image is gradually changing, and the current reality brings with it a bitter truth. This paradise no longer attracts international tourists as it once did, as they begin to opt for destinations with more reasonable costs and fewer hassles. As European tourists start heading to Turkey, Mexicans look for vacations in Japan or Spain, and Canadians choose direct flights to Caribbean destinations. The U.S. is no longer the only appealing destination. Factors such as high costs, complicated administrative procedures, and stringent security regulations have made many tourists feel unwelcome, prompting them to find better alternatives in other countries. The bitterest truth is that even ordinary Americans are facing rising costs. With the decline in international tourists, hotels and restaurants in major cities must compensate for this shortfall by raising their service prices. This creates a vicious cycle. When international tourists don't come, locals end up shouldering higher costs to keep the tourism industry and related services running. As a result, domestic travel is now as expensive as buying a used car. Domestic flights are no longer as cheap as they once were, and additional services, from luggage to meals, have surged in price. Each trip to the airport feels like a gamble. Will the flight be delayed? How much will baggage fees add to the cost? Will the fast food meal from the airport vendor actually be enough to fill you up? Or will it be just a sandwich that leaves you still hungry? This reality is a direct consequence of the increasingly strict political policies and security controls in place in the U.S. While security checks at airports are necessary to ensure national safety, they cause inconvenience and lengthen the waiting time for travelers. These procedures not only create stress for tourists, but also contribute to the rising costs of trips, from additional luggage fees to other service charges that were once unthinkable. Moreover, the U.S. tax policies and travel regulations are also contributing to the country's decreasing competitiveness on the global tourism map. Other countries, such as Turkey, Japan, and Caribbean destinations, have adapted to meet tourists' needs and adjusted their policies to keep visitors coming. In contrast, the U.S. has not made significant changes to revitalize its tourism industry. The lesson here is clear. If the U.S. does not change its approach to the tourism industry, not only will international tourists turn away, but even American citizens may also abandon domestic travel. The government needs to reassess tax policies, reduce administrative procedures, and create a more welcoming environment for tourists. The U.S. must make tourism an attractive and accessible choice again, not just to draw international tourists, but also to serve the domestic travel needs of its own citizens. Additionally, improving the experience at airports and tourist destinations is crucial. Airports need to reduce waiting times and eliminate unreasonable fees. Without these changes, the U.S. will face a bleak tourism future, with both tourists and locals enduring high prices and frustrating administrative procedures. One of the main concerns for international visitors to the United States is the stressful experience at border checkpoints, where travelers not only face hidden fees, but also rigorous immigration procedures that strip away their sense of security. In fact, many people feel like they are participating in a game show when stepping into U.S. airports. A friend of mine once said half-jokingly, "Going to the U.S. now feels like entering a game show. The rules are simple. You walk into the airport, go through customs, and hope you guess the right question. The prize is a passport stamp. If you fail, you might wait for hours or even days in the waiting area without any consolation prize." While this may sound humorous, the reality is very serious. Nowadays, many international visitors report that entering the U.S. is no longer a simple task, but rather a nerve-wracking experience. Every traveler faces intense questioning from customs officers, where everything from phones and laptops to social media accounts is thoroughly scrutinized. Numerous travelers have shared how they feel monitored and investigated without knowing why, simply because they are entering the country. The situation becomes even more serious when certain countries, particularly European ones, face changes in U.S. entry regulations. Travelers from these countries, who once used the STA, electronic system for travel authorization, for quick and convenient entry, are now stripped of this privilege and must apply for a full visa through a far more complicated process. For example, travelers from Europe to Cuba can no longer use ESTA and must undergo the lengthy visa process, which requires significant time and effort. This heightened tension not only annoys travelers, but also damages the U.S.'s image as a friendly, accessible, and open destination for international visitors. When a country enforces excessive security measures that make tourists feel like potential criminals, it creates an invisible barrier between travelers and the U.S., making them reconsider their decision to visit. The worrying aspect is that these security regulations and immigration procedures are becoming more complex and strict, while international tourists are increasingly seeking destinations that are easier and more welcoming. Countries like those in the European Union, Japan, and Latin America have made reforms to simplify entry procedures and reduce excessive controls. This has made these countries more attractive to international tourists, especially when they can easily access them without facing long delays and cumbersome procedures. The lesson here is clear. The U.S. needs to reassess its security measures and immigration procedures. While security is crucial to ensuring the safety of the nation, if regulations and procedures make tourists feel unwelcome and violate their privacy, they will undoubtedly have a negative impact on the tourism industry and the U.S. economy. The U.S. needs to strike a balance between national security and creating a friendly, convenient environment for international visitors. A more open entry policy with a simple and fast process will not only help the U.S. attract international tourists, but also enhance its national image, making tourists feel at ease when choosing the U.S. as their vacation destination. When international tourists stop visiting the U.S., the effects extend beyond just tourism businesses, spreading throughout the economy and directly affecting local communities. One of the most noticeable consequences is that hotels and restaurants are forced to raise prices to compensate for the loss of international visitors. However, it is the everyday Americans who bear the full weight of these wall-building fees. Without international tourists, these businesses try to maintain their profits by increasing costs, and naturally, domestic consumers are the ones who pay. Ordinary workers and families will feel the price hikes in their daily services, from dining out at restaurants to staying in hotels, from short vacations to business trips. It's like a vicious cycle. When international visitors no longer come, this revenue shortfall is placed on the shoulders of local residents, driving up the cost of living while the quality of services declines. It's not just about the cost. When international visitors are absent, major cities will see a drop in tourism-related revenue. This is a crucial income stream not only for the service industries, but also for the budgets of cities and states. Tourism tax revenue helps improve infrastructure, maintain public services, and fund community development projects. When this revenue is cut, cities will face budget shortfalls, leading to cuts in infrastructure spending and public services. The consequence is that not only will tourists suffer, but local residents will also experience reduced service quality and higher costs. Cities may have to scale back public services like public transportation, cultural and entertainment activities, or even the maintenance of public facilities. This not only impacts the quality of life for residents, but also reduces the city's appeal to both international tourists and its own population. Moreover, the decline in tourism also results in the loss of an important source of employment for millions of workers. Workers in the restaurant, hotel, tourism, and transportation industries will face unemployment or reduced wages as businesses scale back operations. This creates a cycle of poverty, where workers have unstable incomes and limited spending power, which further impacts small businesses in the community. The lesson here from the decline in tourism is the importance of maintaining a welcoming and attractive environment for international tourists. Without improvements in tourism policies and a reduction in barriers for visitors, the U.S. will continue to see a decrease in tourism revenue, which will severely affect local communities, the economy, and the quality of life for residents. The U.S. needs to act quickly to restore and sustain the tourism industry as a cornerstone of the economy, not only to serve international visitors, but also to protect the interests of local citizens and communities. The United States is not only facing a decline in international visitors, but this issue has far-reaching effects that directly impact the economy and the lives of its citizens. Tourists from Mexico, who once frequently visited the U.S., are among those suffering as they face barriers due to policies and entry procedures. But it is not just them who pay the price. We, the everyday Americans, are the ones who ultimately bear the brunt of this decline. When the tourism industry loses international guests, the service sector and other industries dependent on tourism also face crisis. Job losses, rising prices, and declining service quality are all contributing to a negative cycle that, in the end, local residents must shoulder. Communities in major cities will face budget cuts for infrastructure, public services, and employment. This not only affects local citizens, but also diminishes the US's appeal in the eyes of international tourists. We are not only losing tourists, but we are also losing the competitiveness and attractiveness of a country that was once a global leader in tourism. If nothing changes, the US will continue to fall behind, while other countries will continue to grow and thrive due to their more welcoming and tourist-friendly policies. The call to action is clear. The government and relevant agencies need to reform tourism policies, reduce bureaucratic procedures, simplify entry processes, and reconsider the hidden fees that both tourists and locals are burdened with. This is not only necessary to restore the tourism industry, but also to protect the economy and ensure that ordinary Americans do not pay the price for the loss of tourism revenue. Leave a comment below this video. What do you think about the current state of tourism in the US? Are these changes a sign of a major shift in the future? We would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever wondered why the streets of Los Angeles, New York, or Vegas are so quiet? I bet there will be nearly no South Korean tourists in the US in the next few years. This is a typical remark, but it might also be a warning sign for US tourism in 2026. Just a few years ago, over 2 million South Korean tourists visited the United States every year, filling restaurants, casinos, and streets with energy. But now, that number has dropped to less than a third of what it once was. So why are South Korean tourists leaving? And who will be left to pay the price for this dramatic disappearance? Will American businesses and tourist hotspots feel the impact? Let's dive into this story and uncover the truth behind the declining numbers. If you agree with this shift, comment 1 below. If not, leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Now let's explore this fascinating issue together. In recent years, Korean tourism in the US has undergone a significant change, especially with a sharp decline in the number of visitors from South Korea. A few years ago, the number of Korean tourists visiting the US exceeded 2 million annually, contributing greatly to the economy, especially in major cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Las Vegas. These areas were accustomed to the presence of Korean tourists, which not only made the neighborhoods livelier, but also boosted the development of service industries such as restaurants, hotels, and retail stores. However, the current situation is in stark contrast. One of the most noticeable signs of this decline is the emptiness of popular restaurants, especially BBQ spots, where customers used to wait 40 minutes for a table. Now these restaurants are not only lacking in customers, but are also facing issues with dusty tables, idle staff, and the absence of the clinking sounds of glasses that used to ring through the air. This situation is not just happening at Korean restaurants, but has spread to other stores and services that once catered to Korean tourists. The biggest loss that the US economy faces is not only the reduction in revenue from restaurants, but also the impact on other sectors, including Uber drivers, hotel staff, and small businesses. Uber drivers, who were once an integral part of the transportation for tourists, no longer benefit from the increased trips by Korean visitors. Meanwhile, hotels, from large chains to small establishments, are facing empty rooms and declining revenue as the number of bookings has dropped significantly. Small business owners, who relied on Korean tourists for a steady income, are now deeply concerned. They have not only lost a key customer base, but are also facing fierce competition from other services. This has driven many businesses into difficult situations, some of which have even had to close or scale back their operations. This situation is not just an issue for the service industry, but also has a widespread impact on the entire local economic ecosystem. Several factors have contributed to this decline, including changes in policies and the global economic situation. One important factor is the economic situation in South Korea, where a decrease in income and international travel demand has had a significant impact on people's travel decisions. As the standard of living rises, international travel expenses are no longer prioritized. Additionally, factors such as visa policies and changes in social and cultural elements have also contributed to the decrease in the number of tourists traveling to the US. Moreover, global disruptions, from the COVID-19 pandemic to economic and political crises, have made it harder for South Koreans to travel freely. When the pandemic hit, international flights were restricted, and travel became difficult and unsafe, causing many South Koreans to delay their trips. Although recovery signs post-pandemic have been positive, international tourism has yet to return to pre-pandemic levels. Looking at the situation of Korean tourism in the U.S., several important lessons can be drawn for the U.S. tourism industry. First, over-reliance on a specific group of tourists is a risky factor. Restaurants and service businesses need to diversify their clientele and should not depend solely on one group of visitors, even if they come from a country with a stable influx like South Korea. Expanding customer bases, including developing products and services targeted at other potential markets, will help mitigate the negative impacts when the number of tourists changes. Second, the tourism industry needs to build sustainable and flexible strategies. From improving customer experiences to developing attractive travel packages, tourism managers need to innovate and be creative to attract international tourists again. This will not only help the tourism sector grow stronger, but also ensure quick recovery after market shocks. Lastly, there must be close cooperation between service businesses and the government. The U.S. government should introduce supportive policies for the tourism industry, from easing visa barriers for international visitors to creating incentive programs to attract back tourists from South Korea and other countries. Developing a business-friendly and supportive environment will create opportunities for the U.S. tourism industry to recover and grow stronger in the future. Although the Korean tourism sector in the U.S. is facing many difficulties right now, with the right policies and innovative business strategies, the U.S. tourism industry can still recover and attract a large number of visitors from South Korea again in the future. The changes in travel trends will open up new opportunities for businesses, as long as they are able to adapt and change with the new circumstances. However, the most important lesson from this decline is never to underestimate the changes in consumer and travel trends. The U.S. tourism industry must continue to innovate and grow, creating exceptional travel products that appeal to a diverse range of customers, thereby contributing to the sustainable development of the tourism economy in the future. Recently, the mass deportation of over 300 Korean workers from Georgia has shaken not only the Korean community in the U.S., but also has had a significant impact on the trust that Korean tourists have in the U.S. tourism industry. This incident is not merely a legal or administrative issue, but highlights a deeper concern about how foreign citizens and tourists are treated, sparking concerns among those planning to visit the U.S. The deportation of Korean workers in Georgia has not only caused debates about the legality of the decision, but also created a wave of anxiety within the Korean community, particularly those planning to travel or work in the U.S. Many Korean families have begun to cancel planned trips, fearing that they may face harsh scrutiny or even be treated unfairly upon arrival. One major question raised in this context is, if Korean workers are treated this way, can Korean tourists expect to be welcomed? This question reflects doubts not only about Americans' friendliness toward international visitors, but also about the insecurity felt by those preparing to travel to the U.S. Will the policies and actions of the U.S. government create a safe and welcoming environment for tourists? Or will this event mark the beginning of a negative trend for Korean tourists? It's not just the Korean workers who are concerned about unfair treatment. Many Korean tourists are starting to rethink whether they should travel to the U.S. A Korean family who had planned to visit the U.S. shared that they are considering canceling their trip due to concerns over strict checks and the possibility of being treated unjustly, which has made them feel unwelcome. This is a major psychological shock for those who have always viewed the U.S. as an ideal tourist destination characterized by freedom and friendliness. This issue goes beyond how foreign workers are treated. It also touches on trust in the system and policies of a country. When such a major event occurs, it not only damages the trust of the affected country's citizens, but also influences those who are planning to visit that country. A person might reconsider their travel plans if they feel unsafe or worry that their treatment will not be fair. The deportation of Korean workers is not just a temporary event. It will have long-lasting effects. Tourism is one of the most important industries in the U.S., particularly for major cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Las Vegas, which heavily rely on international visitors. Losing the trust of a large group of tourists, such as the Koreans, can have long-term consequences on the country's tourism industry. Businesses in the U.S., especially those in the service industry, will face a reduction in tourists, which will negatively impact revenue and create a downward cycle in the tourism economy. The lesson to be learned from this event is the importance of maintaining the trust of international tourists. Authorities and organizations need to take measures to ensure that tourists feel safe and are treated fairly when they visit the U.S. A clear strategy should be in place to protect the rights of citizens and visitors, ensuring they always feel welcomed in the diverse environment of the U.S. Additionally, the U.S. tourism industry must focus on improving the country's image to international visitors. Unfair treatment of one group can have a negative ripple effect on others, especially when incidents like the deportation of Korean workers come to light. The U.S. must do more to ensure that all visitors, regardless of nationality or ethnicity, are treated equally and fairly when they come to visit. The U.S. tourism industry has long relied on the influx of international visitors, especially from economically strong countries like South Korea. On average, each Korean tourist spends over $4,000 during their visit to the U.S., a substantial amount for the country's economy. From dining, shopping, and lodging to tourist activities, these expenditures contribute significantly to the development of the service and tourism industries in the U.S. However, with the decline in Korean tourists, the U.S. economy is not only losing direct revenue from their spending, but also suffering indirect consequences from changes in consumption and travel habits. Even a small group, such as 100 tourists, altering their travel plans can result in the U.S. losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in economic activity. If a Korean family decides to cancel their trip to the U.S. due to concerns about unfair treatment, this will significantly reduce the revenue for businesses related to tourism, from hotels and restaurants to car rental companies and entertainment services. While the change in numbers might seem minor, the economic impact is substantial, especially for cities that rely heavily on international visitors. The emptiness at tourist spots, stores, and essential services not only leads to reduced revenue, but also diminishes opportunities for local employment for those dependent on the tourism industry. However, the larger loss is not just in monetary terms, but also in trust. The trust of international visitors in the U.S. as a welcoming destination has been eroded. When visitors from a major country like South Korea feel they are treated unfairly, this not only reduces the number of tourists, but also creates hesitation in planning future trips. A shift in the behavior of one group of tourists can lead to a ripple effect, influencing tourists from other countries. Travelers from other nations may reconsider visiting the U.S. because they do not want to experience similar treatment. A recent survey in South Korea revealed that nearly 60% of the population feels disappointed by how the U.S. handled the situation, particularly the deportation of workers. This disappointment does not only affect trade contracts, but also influences the travel decisions of South Koreans. When confidence in the policies and management of the U.S. is shaken, simple decisions like booking a hotel or purchasing a flight ticket to the U.S. are affected. South Korean tourists no longer feel safe or welcome, leading them to alter their travel plans, which has a significant detrimental effect on the tourism industry. Surveys show that when trust is weakened, tourists not only cancel their planned trips, but also become less likely to choose the U.S. as a travel destination in the future. This further increases instability in the tourism economy, as international tourist numbers drop and related businesses face declining revenues and uncertainty for the future. When trust in a country is compromised, industries tied to tourism and services face not only short-term revenue loss but also long-term impacts. Travel businesses, hotels, airlines, and retail stores will find it difficult to recover in a short time unless timely measures are taken to restore the trust of international tourists. Moreover, if the dissatisfaction of tourists is not addressed quickly and effectively, it could create a negative feedback loop. Potential tourists from other countries will begin to feel wary, and a tourism economy that is in the process of recovery may spiral back into crisis. This highlights that trust is not only a crucial factor in attracting tourists, but also a foundation for the sustainable development of the tourism industry. In the current context, South Korean tourists are increasingly shifting their focus to alternative destinations, partly due to feelings of unfriendliness and difficulties in obtaining U.S. visas. Japan, Paris, and other locations have become attractive options, as many Korean travelers feel less welcome in the U.S. or face cumbersome administrative procedures. This shift not only reflects a change in travel trends, but also serves as an alarming signal for the U.S. tourism industry. One of the key reasons why South Korean tourists are looking for alternatives is the sense of unfriendliness and insecurity. Recent events, such as the mass deportation of Korean workers in Georgia, have eroded the trust that the Korean community has in the U.S. Disappointment over how the U.S. handled issues related to Korean citizens has led to reluctance in visiting the country. Furthermore, the U.S. visa application process is seen as complicated and time-consuming, causing many Korean tourists to feel frustrated and choose more accessible destinations, such as Japan, where visa procedures are much simpler. Besides Japan, Paris has also emerged as a popular destination. The City of Lights not only offers rich culture and history, but is also known for its warm hospitality toward international tourists. Promotional travel programs and more flexible visa policies have made Paris an increasingly attractive destination, especially for Korean tourists seeking a safer and more accessible travel environment. The shift in travel preferences of Korean tourists is not only impacting the tourism industry, but also significantly affecting the U.S. economy, particularly businesses in the service sector. If just 50 Korean tourists cancel their trips, the financial loss could amount to $200,000 in just a few days. This can cause a significant decline in revenue for restaurants, hotels, and many other businesses tied to tourism. Restaurants that once catered to a large number of Korean visitors will see a dramatic drop in revenue. And it's not just them. The car rental services, tour guides, and other entertainment activities will also be affected. Small businesses that relied heavily on Korean tourists may face closures or scale reductions, leading to job losses for many local residents. The impact of this shift in Korean tourists' preferences is not only short-term, but could persist into the future. As more Korean travelers start seeking other destinations, the U.S. will not only lose an important source of tourism, but also face a loss of trust and national image. Other international tourists, particularly from economically strong countries like Japan and South Korea, will take note of this change in travel behavior and may decide to avoid visiting the U.S. In addition to the direct financial impact, this shift also affects long-term competition within the tourism industry. Countries like Japan and France, with flexible tourism policies and warm welcomes for international visitors, are becoming increasingly attractive to tourists from countries like South Korea. Without a change in the U.S.'s approach and tourism policies, the country may lose its leading position in the global tourism industry. If you agree with the points raised in this story, leave a 1 in the comments below. If you disagree, leave a 0. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us. Stay tuned for more updates and developments. The U.S. tourism industry, especially in major cities like Los Angeles, New York, Las Vegas, and Hawaii, has been facing a series of challenges due to the decline in international visitors, particularly from South Korea. South Korean tourists have long been a significant contributor to the local economy through spending in the service industries, from restaurants and hotels to taxi services like Uber. However, when the number of Korean tourists decreases or they choose not to visit the U.S., the economic impact is very evident and affects a wide range of industries and businesses that depend on international tourism. One of the most heavily impacted sectors when Korean tourists stop coming to the U.S. is the service industry. Uber drivers, hotel staff, and restaurant workers are all facing significant drops in income. Uber drivers, who once had steady earnings from serving tourists, are now struggling with fewer passengers. Meanwhile, hotel staff who relied on international guests are now dealing with vacant rooms and declining revenue. Korean-owned restaurants, which were popular destinations for Korean tourists, no longer face long waits for tables. These restaurants are now quiet, with employees being sent home early due to the lack of customers. Restaurants and stores that were once bustling, especially in Korean districts, have now been forced to close or scale back operations to cope with the drop in customers. This not only results in revenue loss, but also has a ripple effect on the economy of areas with large Korean communities, such as the Korean neighborhoods in Los Angeles, Hawaii, New York, and Las Vegas. Many families and individuals within the Korean community are also facing income loss, while small business owners are forced to cut costs or even shut down their operations. Korean neighborhoods in major cities, once crowded with tourists and residents, have now become quiet and deserted. In Los Angeles, Hawaii, Las Vegas, and New York, restaurants and stores serving Korean cuisine are no longer as busy as before. These neighborhoods, once lively and bustling with the presence of tour groups and locals, have now become eerily silent, with empty streets, closed shops, and restaurants with no patrons. This reflects a major shift in the tourism industry and its widespread impact on local businesses. Along with the quiet streets, employees at restaurants, hotels, and other tourism-related businesses are facing reduced working hours, layoffs, or even job losses. Car rental companies, tour services, and other entertainment activities that once relied on the presence of Korean tourists are also seeing reduced revenues and temporary closures. The impact of the decline in Korean tourists is not only immediate, but could have long-term consequences for the economy of areas reliant on international tourism. Korean neighborhoods, which once enjoyed a steady influx of tourists, now face unprecedented silence. Businesses need to quickly adapt and find alternative solutions to minimize the damage. To recover and sustain the growth of the U.S. tourism industry, particularly in the heavily affected areas, specific measures must be taken to attract international tourists back. The government and relevant authorities could consider revising visa policies, simplifying administrative procedures, and creating a more tourist-friendly environment to welcome international visitors. Local businesses should also consider diversifying their products and services so they are no longer overly dependent on a single group of tourists. The U.S. tourism industry is facing significant changes in the behavior of international travelers, particularly from South Korea. Factors such as stringent visa processes and the feeling of not being welcomed are causing many South Korean tourists to seek out alternative destinations. These changes not only affect tourism revenue, but could also have a long-term impact on America's image as a friendly and attractive destination for international visitors. One of the primary factors driving the shift in travel trends among South Koreans is the increasingly difficult and costly visa application process. The rise in visa fees and the stricter requirements for visa applications have made it difficult and exhausting for many South Korean travelers to navigate a complex process. Increased scrutiny, such as the demand for additional documentation, proving financial stability, travel history, and detailed background checks, has created additional barriers for visitors. In contrast to the stringent U.S. visa process, many other countries such as Japan, France, and various Southeast Asian destinations have much simpler visa procedures, making it easier for international travelers, particularly South Koreans, to visit. These factors not only push South Korean tourists away from the U.S., but also make other countries more appealing. When visa applications become time-consuming and costly, many people opt for countries with simpler procedures that save both time and effort. In addition to the complex visa process, another important factor contributing to South Koreans choosing alternative destinations is the feeling of being unwelcome when visiting the U.S. Recent events, such as the deportation of Korean workers in Georgia, have caused the Korean community and tourists to feel unfairly treated and unwelcome. When citizens of a country face unclear policies or controversial decisions, they can easily feel unsafe and disrespected when visiting. The disappointment and concern about being subjected to strict checks have heightened anxieties for tourists planning to visit the U.S. Not only are they worried about complicated administrative procedures, but they also feel that they will not receive a warm welcome, creating discomfort when visiting a country like the U.S. These issues not only affect the number of South Korean tourists, but also create a ripple effect that impacts other countries, where more welcoming visa policies and ease of entry are more attractive. While the U.S. faces significant barriers to attracting South Korean tourists, other countries are working to create more flexible and easier policies. Japan, for example, offers a simple visa application process that doesn't require excessive documentation. This makes Japan a more appealing destination for South Korean tourists, rather than the U.S. Additionally, countries like France and Thailand stand out with convenient visa policies, combined with promotional travel programs and services welcoming international visitors. As other destinations strive to improve procedures and increase their warmth towards tourists, the U.S. is experiencing a decline in international visitors from countries like South Korea. This creates fierce competition from other destinations where simple procedures, friendliness, and cultural appeal easily attract tourists. To restore trust and re-attract South Korean tourists, the U.S. needs to reconsider its visa policies and create a simpler process, minimizing the complex procedures. This will improve the international travel experience and create a friendlier tourism environment. Moreover, the U.S. must do more to show warmth and friendliness toward international tourists, particularly those from countries like South Korea. A clear and flexible tourism strategy, combined with attractive travel promotion programs and reasonable visa policies, will help the U.S. not only revive tourism from South Korea, but also strengthen its position on the global tourism map. The tourism industry plays a vital role in the U.S. economy, not only generating revenue from tourists' spending, but also creating millions of jobs and contributing to the growth of service industries. However, when a significant number of international tourists, especially from countries like South Korea, cancel their trips, the consequences are not just financial, but also have wide-reaching impacts on industries and growth opportunities within the U.S. economy. An impressive figure highlighting the economic impact of tourism on the U.S. is that when 10,000 South Korean families cancel their trips, the U.S. economy can lose millions of dollars in revenue. On average, each South Korean tourist spends around $17,000 during their visit to the U.S., including expenses for hotels, restaurants, shopping, flights, and tourist activities. When these expenditures are lost, businesses within the tourism industry, ranging from restaurants to retail stores, from hotels to transportation services, are forced to deal with a sharp decline in revenue, directly affecting their profits and survival. The consequences of declining tourism extend beyond businesses directly related to tourism, as it impacts industries that depend on it. Services such as transportation, car rentals, travel insurance, and entertainment activities are also severely affected. This causes a slowdown in the local economy and triggers a negative chain reaction in other sectors. The loss of South Korean tourists could lead to an even greater setback: the long-term development opportunities for the U.S. tourism economy. International tourists are not only a source of immediate revenue, but also act as ambassadors of American culture, fostering diplomatic relationships and creating a positive image of the U.S. on the international stage. However, when tourists from countries like South Korea feel unwelcome or unfairly treated, they may choose to visit other destinations that offer a more accessible tourism environment. If dissatisfaction with visa processes and unfair treatment spreads, other countries like Mexico, India, or Brazil may also feel unwelcome and redirect their tourism elsewhere. Countries such as Dubai, Singapore, and Canada, with simpler visa policies and more welcoming tourism environments, are becoming increasingly attractive to international tourists. This could result in the U.S. losing a significant amount of tourism revenue from developed countries, not only reducing direct income but also eliminating long-term development opportunities. Another factor to consider is the shift in the mindset of international tourists towards the U.S. When tourists feel unwelcome or are concerned about unfair treatment, they will not only cancel their trips but could influence the decisions of other tourists from different countries. A decline in tourism from one major country can create a ripple effect, causing tourists from other regions to reconsider their destination choices. This could make it difficult for the U.S. tourism economy to recover and grow. As mentioned, industries reliant on tourism will suffer significant consequences if tourist numbers decline. Restaurants, hotels, retail stores, and entertainment services all play a key role in providing jobs and income to the economy. When the number of tourists drops, businesses face revenue loss, leading to scaling back operations or reducing staff. This not only impacts businesses, but also affects thousands of workers in the service industry. Additionally, the decline in South Korean tourists may lead to an imbalance in regions that depend on the tourism industry. Major cities like Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and New York, which have a strong presence of the Korean community and popular tourist spots, will face significant reductions in tourist numbers, directly impacting businesses and employment in those areas. The U.S. tourism industry is facing significant challenges with the decline in international visitors, particularly from countries like South Korea. To improve the situation and attract international tourists back, the U.S. needs to implement a series of reform measures. Here are specific proposals to help revive the industry. One of the most important factors influencing international tourists' decisions is the visa process. Currently, obtaining a U.S. visa is considered complicated and expensive, causing many tourists, especially from countries like South Korea, to rethink their travel plans to the U.S. To address this issue, the U.S. must simplify the visa application process and reduce the complex administrative procedures. In particular, reducing visa fees and expanding electronic visa options for visitors from economically developed countries will make travel to the U.S. more accessible and ease international tourists' concerns. Additionally, expanding visa exemptions or reducing processing times for visitors from countries with high tourism rates will help restore confidence and attract tourists back to the U.S. The U.S. must also implement a strong communication strategy to promote its image as a safe, friendly, and welcoming destination for international visitors. This involves not only easing administrative procedures, but also building a positive image of the country's diversity and inclusiveness. Promoting policies that protect international tourists' rights and ensuring their safety will help create a sense of security for travelers visiting the U.S. Instead of allowing negative events, such as the deportation of Korean workers, to damage the country's image, the U.S. should highlight positive stories of warm welcomes and support for visitors. Communication strategies can include organizing global promotional campaigns, partnering with international tourism organizations, and using social media channels to connect with travelers, making them feel that the U.S. is a safe and opportunity-filled destination. Another crucial factor in attracting international tourists back to the U.S. is the collaboration between government agencies and local businesses. Tourism businesses, restaurants, hotels, and other support services play a key role in creating a great travel experience for visitors. The government needs to work with these businesses to launch quick support programs and special incentives for international tourists. Programs such as discounted flight tickets, hotel room deals, or free admission to attractions for international tourists will create a positive domino effect. These initiatives will not only help businesses in the tourism sector recover quickly, but also make tourists feel welcomed and motivated to return to the U.S. Moreover, creating special travel packages, in combination with cultural, sports, and arts programs, will help the U.S. attract international tourists more effectively. Large events like international tourism fairs, cultural festivals, or holiday travel promotions will help position the U.S. as an unmissable destination.